2 days passed in which Ning managed to set up everything he would need to revamp the store. He painted the inside and outside of the shop to make it look more premium. He added railings to the stairs that led to the shop. He added glass doors and windows, where he hung the majority of the products for everyone outside to see. He also added a light fixture, created using conversion, that spelled out the name of the shop, Kieran's Love. He added other small tweaks on the inside too, making the shop look far more attractive than it ever was. He added various pieces of furniture to improve the indoor aesthetic. He added seating areas for the customers to have a more comfortable time inside. Finally, he added new weapons and artifacts of his own to the list that was already in the shop to attract people who might want them, some of which would be incredibly hard to come by. He had only had a few days to make what he could, but that still amounted to a few dozen, which was more than enough. The woman was completely flabbergasted at the transformation her shop had gone through. She barely even recognized it when she came down to go next door to buy something. "How much did you pay for this?" she asked Ning. "Hopefully not too much," Ning said, not telling her the actual numbers. He hadn't paid for most of what he had done after all. The system had taken care of the little things. "I should be able to make it all back if business goes well." "I hope you do," the woman said. "But shouldn't you have informed me? It's in the contract that you must." "Oh, the expenditure never crossed the threshold," Ning lied, "so there was no need to." "Is that so?" the woman said. There was no need for her to try and find the truth since it wasn't her money that Ning had used. Still, she felt guilty thinking she would be making use of what he did to better her own shop. "Where are you headed to?" Ning asked her. "Need some sugar," she said, pointing toward the wall, referring to the general store on the other side of that wall. "When will you start taking customers?" "I've technically already started taking customers, but I suppose I won't see any changes for a few days," Ning said. "No worries though. I've sent Emma and Haddon to spread around some pamphlets to advertise the store." "Advertisement?" the woman asked. "That's just wasted money." Her face got a little serious all of a sudden, and it invites unneeded attention. "I can guess that," Ning said. "Don't worry, they'll find me hard to fight against even if they come at me full force." The woman gave a small nod and looked outside. "It's close to evening time. Tell your kids to not walk around at night time. You never know what could happen in the city." Ning gave a nod. "They should be back soon." The woman left for a few minutes and returned with the sugar, leaving straight for upstairs. Ning sat on the chair, behind the desk he had made for himself, looking at the textbooks that Emma was done reading. He had no knowledge of the beasts of this world aside from what he was already aware of, so he decided to read it instead of gaining all the knowledge at once. He had to pass the time somehow. He had only just gotten to the page about a greenhorn battle beetle and its incredible wind essence horns that were a natural conduit when the doors opened up. He looked up, wondering if Emma and Haddon were back, but instead, it was a young girl with a look of awe on her face. "Am I in the right place?" she asked as if jokingly, looking all around her. Ning waited for the girl to approach him, but she simply went around looking at the different weapons on the wall and touching through the furniture that was around the room. Weird girl, he thought. Seeing that she wasn't approaching him, it seemed it was his turn instead to approach her. He got out of his chair and walked up to her. "Welcome to Kieran's Love," Ning said. "You must have received one of our pamphlets. How may I help you?" The girl turned sharply, her crystalline blue eyes landing on him. She looked at him up and down, and Ning did the same in return. She wore a weirdly formal dress with a shirt and tight skirt that went all the way to her shin. Her hair was half tied and half free, while a necklace hung around her neck with a dark purple crystal embedded deep within it. "You're quite young," the girl said. "I'm old enough," Ning said. "Can I help you with anything? I can recommend you a weapon if you want to buy one." "How much did you spend on the renovation?" the girl asked. "Sorry," Ning asked. "This shop, you renovated it, correct?" she asked. "How much did that cost?" Ning narrowed his eyes. "Why would you want to know that?" he asked. "Because if you spend more than 1,000 fire coins for renovations in your shop without the city's knowledge, you will be fined for it. They need to approve the changes you make according to the city rules," the girl said. "I do?" Ning asked. "Did you not read the contract?" the girl asked. "It was written there that you must inform Aunt Layla about any changes that would cost over 1,000 fire coins. You did tell her, right?" Ning paused for a moment before realizing that she was not a customer at all. "I see," he said. You must be Juna. Miss Layla has spoken a lot about you. The girl extended her hand. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I get too fixated on my work. I am Juna. What may I call you? Ning grabbed her hand. I am Ning. You don't have to worry, Ning told the girl. Most of what I used were things I already owned. Even then, they don't add up to 1,000 fire coins. It's not really that big a shop after all. The girl named Juna looked around the shop. The renovations do look costly though, she said, looking around the room. She pointed at the glasses and furniture, letting Ning know how costly they would have to be. I suggest filing a formal request for someone from the government to come and measure the changes, she said. It's better that way so that someone doesn't find this as an excuse to close this shop. What happens if I did use more than 1,000 fire coins? Ning asked. Will they make me tear down everything? The rule for it is just to stop people from making changes that would reflect badly on the city, the girl said. There are many people that assume that because they own the land, they can make anything in there. Even if the land is theirs, there are rules. If you did use more than 1,000 fire coins, or are found to have done so, the city will send someone to see if the changes made are according to regulations, the girl said. If you report the cost and changes, so long as the changes are in regulation, they will do nothing, she said. But if they found you to have not reported the changes, they will test it, and even if the changes are in regulation, they will still make you fine with. Considering just what type of shop this is, I highly recommend not giving your competitors a chance to screw up with you. They are already rich and have hands that reach into the government as well. You will need to make sure to not give those people a reason to try a way to find you. Ning thought for a bit before nodding. He sighed, realizing how tedious it all was and couldn't help but get bored. Still, he looked at the girl with favorable eyes. Thank you for your instructions, he said. I will do it tomorrow. If you can get up by 8, I can take you there early and help you deal with the legal matters, she said. You will do that? Ning asked in surprise. But we only just met. Don't be mistaken, the girl said. I'm doing it for Aunt Layla. I have only just met you and have no reason to care for your personal circumstances. Ning smiled and nodded. He looked at her core and then reached for a sword at the wall before pulling it out. Here's a gift for your incredible help, he said, handing over a sand sword, matching the girl's earth essence. The girl looked surprised. I don't need it, she said. I was only helping because I wanted to, she said. I'm giving this because I want to as well, Ning said. But I don't have the money for it, she said. It's a gift. You don't charge for gifts. But then how will you pay back Aunt Layla her share of the cost? This is my artifact. I don't have to give her a share for anything that wasn't made by her husband, Ning said. You wrote those clauses too, right? The girl nodded, before taking the weapon with a slow hand. She looked at the weapon for a while, surprised at how good it was. A weapon by itself was quite useless to her as a government official, but getting one felt quite good. Thank you, she said. Truly, the sword disappeared into the necklace she wore. Ning couldn't help but stare at that necklace. May I ask where you bought that? Ning asked, pointing to the necklace. This? At one of the other artifact shops, she said. Knight's gear, if I remember correctly. And they sell a lot of it? He asked. Plenty, why? The girl asked. Ning couldn't help but frown. Do you have any idea where they could be getting this from? He asked. The girl only shook her head. What's wrong with this? She asked curiously. Nothing is precisely wrong, Ning said. It's just that making something like that would be impossible for almost everyone in this world. I just can't believe that there is someone out there who is capable of making such an artifact. As far as Ning understood, space essence wasn't easy to come by at all. Especially space essence core amongst all was more or less impossible to come by. Because of that, space artifacts could only be made by very strong converters with many years of knowledge. Even then, what they did make used to have barely any space due to the lack of quality. However, these space artifacts that Ning had been seeing lately had a great bit of quality to them, and more surprisingly, they were so readily available that it made no sense at all. Something weird must have been going on. Ning wanted to find out what it was that was doing it, but there was no fun in that. He would find out about it on his own if he was meant to. He was brought out of his thoughts by the door of the shop opening. Emma walked in, pushing the door further in. We should have the door prop open during the time when the shop is open, she said. There isn't much point if the door is closed and hard to. She stopped when she saw the girl. Oh, we already have a customer? She couldn't help but ask. Ah, no, Ning said. This is Juna. She lives next door with her parents. The general store? Emma asked before looking at the girl. She introduced herself quickly and had Hadden introduce himself as well. Juna was quite surprised to see kids here as she hadn't been told about them. Only now did she realize that she might have been talking to someone much older than her. I must leave now, she quickly said. I will see you all tomorrow morning, goodbye. Early morning, Ning met up with Juna an hour before her work started. Good morning, did you prepare all the documents? Juna asked. Hi, there isn't much document to gather. As I said, I used mostly what I already owned, Ning said. But you did list down what you used, right? We can take the general market price for that, Juna said. Oh yeah, I did that, Ning said, bringing out a piece of paper. I even wrote down the market prices from what I could figure out. Juna gave a quick look through them before nodding. That will work, she said. Let's go. It was still morning, and people were getting to work or setting up shops still. Only a few shops had been fully opened by now. Carriages moved slowly inside the inner city, and it was even slower in the core. There were just too many carriages in the city. It's like this every year around this time, Juna explained. People from around the empire and sometimes even further beyond to try and get their children to get into the prestigious Starbeast Institute. So, you see an influx of carriages. Must be troublesome, Ning said. Not really, she said. It's also one of the best months for sales, and incomes around the city go up by a lot. You should promote the shop even more so you can take advantage of these few remaining days. I will, thank you, Ning said. The two arrived at the Department of Commerce and found their way toward the section that dealt with shops and merchants. Juna helped him with the files and soon they were ready to present it to the person in charge. Even when they arrived early, there were other people already before them. So, the two had to stay in line for half an hour before it was their time. They stood outside of a room, standing next to a window, on the other side of which was an old man. He looked at the documents through the thick-framed spectacles he wore. You made renovations, the man asked slowly, his voice weirdly increasing in pitch at the final word like he had to force it out. Yes, just 2 days ago, Ning said. You did all of this in just 2 days? The man asked. Yes, Ning said. The man looked through the details. A weapons shop? He asked. Hiran's love? Yes, Ning said. The man looked at the details for a few seconds longer, before taking a stamp and stamping the paper. Someone will come by your shop, between 2 and 5 later, today. If not today, they will come at the same time, tomorrow. Be ready to accept them. Ning nodded. I won't have to pay any extra fee, right? He asked. From what this says, no, the man said. But the evaluator will have the final say. Thank you, Ning said, and Juna took him away. That's it, huh? He asked her. That is it. Now go back and don't leave. When the officer comes, let me check it all thoroughly. Don't try to hide anything. If they smell misdoings, they won't hesitate to charge you a fee, or worse. Anyway, I'm late for work. Don't mess it up. Okay, Ning said and watched her leave before thinking to himself, what's worse? He returned to the shop and found Emma on the bench, reading her books while Hadden slept on the other side, his body still in pain from the training he had been through earlier today. Where are the kids? He asked. With their mother, probably sleeping, Emma said and closed the book. You had a customer earlier. Oh, Ning said excitedly. And? Nothing, she said. They looked around and left without buying. I think you need to make the swords more flashy or something. There's little use of aesthetics for these, Ning said. Besides, it's Miss Lila's husband's life's work. I won't just change it. Emma shrugged. I'll go out for now. Go and find out what else I have to learn before the test, she said, leaving to get Umbra and the others. Here, share this around when you get the chance, Ning said and handed over a bunch more pamphlets. Emma left, and Hadden left to eat after waking up some time later. Old Lady Layla never left her room for the day. So, Ning was left alone, waiting for customers that never came. He couldn't even go to the back to make some weapons just in case the officer came to check. So he just waited, and in the meantime, read a bit more of the book that his daughter had left behind. He was a few dozen pages in when the door opened and someone walked in. "Welcome to Hiran's Love," he spoke enthusiastically and paused when he saw the person who walked in. The person wore clothes that reminded Ning of the person he saw during his visit to the Department of Commerce this morning. "Are you the owner of this shop?" the man asked. He was a short man with a fat belly and hair that seemed to have more oil in it than a regular dish of fried chicken. "Yes, I'm the owner," Ning said. "You must be the officer that was sent to do the evaluation. Welcome." The man said and looked around. He brought out a document, one that Ning had submitted this morning, and looked around the place. He walked close to the windows, looking for smudges. He walked to the wall, sniffing the paint. He went to a dozen different things, judging it all based on what was written on the page in front of him. It all seems to be correct," the man said. "Nothing of what you wrote is false." Ning smiled. "Of course," he said. "But," the man continued, "you failed to inform the department of your latest purchases of items. That is a major violation, and you will have to pay a massive fine for that." "I'm sorry, what?" Ning asked with a confused look on his face. "What violation?" "These items on the shelf, on the walls. They're new items, and they haven't been added to the cost of the change," the man said. "What?" Ning looked around. "No, these cost me nothing. I'm partnering with the previous owner to sell most of what is here, and the remaining ones are something I had." Tisk, tisk, tisk. The man shook his head, swiping his oily hair with his hand before speaking again. "Those sorts of lies won't work on me. I can accept that you acquired some of it from the previous owner if you hand me the contract where it says so. But, if you are telling me that you made the remaining with your little essence rank, then you must take me for a fool." The man humphed at the end to add extra effect. "I am not lying," Ning said, bringing out the contract. "Here, you can see that the owner of this building, Mrs. Layla, had allowed me to sell her husband's works. As for the remaining, I am their maker. If you require me to prove it, I will." The man took the paper and looked at it before throwing it back at Ning. "I will have to tally up the weapons that you didn't get from the previous owner of the shop," he said. "If the total exceeds 1,000 fire coins, I will have to give you punishment." Ning felt his anger building but managed to calm himself down in the end. He looked around at the shop and looked at his own weapons and armor. There were too many. He would easily lose a lot of money to this punishment based on what the man was saying. "If these are mine, then I don't have to pay a fine, correct?" Ning asked. "That would be correct," the man said. "Then I would like to make it officially known that I made the ones that I didn't inherit from the previous owner," Ning said. "I will give any sort of proof that the city will require me to." "That won't do," the man said. "Lying will only get you further in trouble. Just pay a fee. It will come down to around 12,000 fire coins. You will have to pay that within the week." "What?" Ning's eyes went wide in shock. 12,000 fire coins? For making a change that didn't cross 1,000 fire coins? What sort of bullshit is this? "Bullshit? Don't curse at me, boy," the man shouted back. "I am being lenient." "Fuck you, leniency." Ning cursed him back. "You won't look for proof and you think that's being lenient? How about being fair? You haven't bothered testing if my words hold truth or not, and you're already punishing me based on your belief. Don't you think that's stupid?" Instead of seeing reason, the man seemed to get angrier. "What did you say to me?" the man shouted, a finger pointing at Ning. You said, 'Fuck you,' to a government officer. Now you're done." The man quickly scribbled over the punishment he had written and added something. "This shop had violated the district code of appropriate customer interaction, therefore it will now be shut down." "Like hell, it will, you bastard," Ning said. "You will instead lose your job once I complain to the Department of Commerce. I can't believe they let biased pigs like you deal with evaluation." "PP pig? Did you just call me a pig?" the man shouted in fury. He put the pen and paper down before trying to stand tall. "I will have you." "What's going on?" Old Lady Layla walked to the shop. "What's with all the commotion? What is up with the noise?" Hadden walked behind her, rubbing his sleepy eyes with his left hand. "Lady Layla, this is an officer who is threatening to shut down the shop," Ning told her. "What?" Layla looked at the fat man with worry. "Why is the shop being—" She paused. "It's you, you bastard? You dare come back?" It was Ning's time to get surprised. "You know him?" he asked. "Shit," the man said, looking away from the old woman. He hadn't realized it was the same shop he had visited so many years ago. Damn it, they really changed it a lot. Why is this bastard here? The woman asked Ning. He is the officer sent by the government, Ning said, to evaluate my recent expenditure on the shop. This bastard? She asked. He works for the four beasts of Ulharis. His oily head came here a long time ago, trying to threaten to shut us down. He had no cause to do so last time, so he left me alone. Now he's back again? Ning turned around. You work for the four beasts? He asked. That's nonsense, the man said. I don't work for them. Oh, but you do, Ning said. His eyes unfocused a little as he got an assortment of information. Wow. No wonder the four beasts has no competition. They got the government in their pockets and squashed down any competition by sending these goddamn pigs to them. My work is legitimate. You won't work for them again, you understand? Ning asked him. What? The man looked at Ning. If you work for them again, I will come for you, Ning said. Why you? Are you threatening me? The man found a bit of courage. You dare threaten a government officer? Threat? Ning chuckled. Let me show you what a real threat looks like. 23rd Street, 8th Avenue, Inner City, house number 331, Ning said, smiling as the man's face blanked with fear. Yes, I know where you live, Fran Talon. Husband of Greya Ulob. Father of 2 daughters and 1 son. How do you? Your vacation home in Graham City is at 2nd Street, 18th Avenue, house number 458. So you can't get away from me there either. Your first daughter, Gila, is married and expecting, isn't she? Would be a shame if the young boy never got to see his maternal grandfather. You. Ning smiled and handed him the pen and paper. You know what to write here. Emma walked into the shop towards evening with Umbra and the 2 young cubs. You are late, Ning said from the place he stayed at. Took these to the arena to get Umbra to fight. I thought it would be a good idea to show Lori what he would have to do, Emma said. How did the evaluation go? Ning smiled before forming an okay with his fingers. No problems. Oh, good. Anyway, I need a few more books about the history and politics of this continent. Apparently, the written questions will include these. And the practical ones? Ning asked. I'm not sure yet, Emma said. It seems they have different practical tests every time, so it could be anything. I'm prepared for most things that could come my way though, so no worries. She took the book and walked away, leaving Ning behind to the shop without any customers. For the next 3 days, Emma learned everything she could, and on the morning of the 4th day, it was time for the tests to start. Do well, and make your father proud, okay? The old lady said, holding Emma's face in her hands. Good luck. Thank you, Miss Layla. Emma smiled. Come on Lyra, time to go. She didn't need Ning or Umbra to come with her. She went alone, with everything she could possibly need in her storage ring. The morning city was quiet. The only thing in the streets were the people who made their way to the institute. Due to the importance of the institute and the people who came for it, the city was partially shut down for the morning to let the exam takers make their way to the city. Emma saw beasts of all shapes and sizes, every which one she could recognize, make their way to the institute. Just the same as her. She arrived at the core region of the city where the governmental buildings were, as was the Star Beast Institute. The institute itself was surrounded by large walls, everything beyond not visible to the person outside. How many times had Emma come to this place and wondered what was inside? She missed not having her divine sense to easily see inside walls or clairvoyance magic to bring up images of a distant location. Outside the institute, near the gate, she handed over her registration slip for the test to one of the people handling it. After being verified, she was made to fill up a few more things, mostly expanding on the information she had already given them. She also had to give details of the beast she was planning on joining the institute with. Lyra's descriptions were simple to fill and gave her no trouble at all. Your tests will be held at these times in these places. Read through the rules posted across the institute to make sure you don't break them. Emma nodded and made her way inside. Past the institute walls, Emma could finally see how it was inside. Many people and beasts gathered around on a large open ground, with freshly cut grass. A few trees littered the field, but most were far away. The entrance had a 20 feet wide cobblestone path that led to a building in the distance that was the institute. The institute itself was no more than 2 stories tall, but it was wide and it was long. Emma couldn't see how many rooms there were and if the building was even a singular one. She thought she saw another one in the distance, but it could be connected. There was more open space on the other side of the institute, but the ground seemed to slant in that direction, and she couldn't see what that could be there. How wide is this even? She wondered. It's like a small city by itself. Lyra didn't respond. Emma then made her way toward the open ground where everyone else waited for their exam. She opened the note that she received and read through it. 2 writing exams. One in an hour and another in 3 hours, she read the first part. Then a physical exam around 2, and another one an hour after that. That's it. She put the paper in her pocket and made her way to one of the lone trees with people gathered around it. The rules were posted on a piece of paper, stuck to the tree high up. There were no major rules she had to be aware of from what it seemed. These were simple stuff such as don't be disrespectful to others, don't cause trouble, don't destroy institute properties, handle your beast, etc. She still read through it all, and when she was at the end, her attention was taken away. "It's you." Someone gave a little gasp from her side. Emma turned her head to see a well-dressed young girl with curly brown hair and freckles on her hair. "Oh, Betty." "Hi." Emma gave a small smile and a nod. "Hi," the girl replied, not expecting a simple greeting. Her eyes immediately fell on Lyra, widening in surprise. "Is that a shadow puma?" "This is Lyra," Emma asked. "Lyra, say hi." Lyra gave a small yelp with a smile. "Hello," Betty said softly. "I thought shadow pumas were only found in the Springwind continent. How did you get one?" "From the Springwind continent," Emma said. "You've been to that place?" Betty asked before shaking her head. "That doesn't matter. You shouldn't have come this year." "I did say I would, didn't I?" Emma asked. "So you didn't listen to my warnings?" Betty asked. Emma nodded. "Thank you for the warnings. I could see your warnings were well-founded, but they didn't apply to me," she said. "Well, I can only warn. It's your job to take my warning and act accordingly," the young lady said. "I do wish you good luck." Emma watched the young lady walk away and saw something crawl beneath her clothes. A smile formed on her face. "That's a fancy little beast, isn't it?" Emma stood around the field, looking at the various beasts. Most of the beasts there were young. Even young, quite a few of them were large. They would only continue to grow as time went on. A few more people came to ask where she got Lyra from after Betty left, and once they learned that she was from the Springwind continent, they left as well. Betty, on the other hand, was approached by dozens of people every minute, most of whom just greeted her, but a few stayed to talk to her. "She is popular," Emma spoke softly to Lyra. "I wonder what her family name is." Emma had no doubt at this point that the young girl was a noble. A small bell chime rang through the entire institute, announcing the passing of the hour. Immediately, people started making their way toward the main building's doors even before the staff could announce the start of their exam. "Let's go," Emma said, and made her way to the building as well. "Only beasts that fit through here can go in," the woman who was letting them in one by one said. "Also, no toxic beasts allowed indoors. Go over there and keep them there for now." A few people went toward the direction the women pointed to. Lyra was still the size of a young house cat, so she had no problem getting in with Emma. Emma made her way through the rather colorless halls of the institute, making her way to the exam hall. The hall turned out to have a little more color, with wide pinkish walls and a white ceiling. Gentle air flowed through the room, and Emma couldn't understand how it worked. She could sit at any seat, so she chose one closest to her at the front of the room. A few minutes after everyone was seated, questions were handed and she started answering them. The questions seemed to be entirely about history and politics, as well as some math and general knowledge. She had read the books for this for the past 3 days, so she easily answered everything. Lyra simply sat by the side and watched Emma work on it. The answers came easily to Emma, who had excellent memory. With her photographic memory, she could recall every bit of information she read. As for math, there was no way someone so many years old as her wouldn't be good at it. The only problem she had was in the general knowledge, as the knowledge wasn't common to her. It belonged to this planet, and here she was a guest. Thankfully, she thought she did the best she could. She raised her hand, announcing she was done with her paper, and was led out. She didn't miss the low gasps and surprise that everyone showed as she walked away. Arriving outside, she could only go back to the field and wait again. She sat close to the wall, petting Lyra on her lap, and waited. It was only 10 minutes later that a few people started walking out. One of them made his way straight to her. "Hello, may I sit here?" the young man asked. Emma shrugged and let him sit. "I'm James Noren. Who might you be?" the boy asked. He was only 15 years old at best, with bright blonde hair that was a bit too long to comb properly but too short to tie. He wore a leather suit and pants and had no beasts around him. "I'm Emma," Emma replied. "Just Emma?" the boy asked. "My father is used to using his surname as his name, so I didn't get to inherit it. So, just Emma," Emma replied. "Wait, so you are a noble?" the boy asked. "Not precisely," Emma answered. "Is there a reason why you came to talk with me?" "Can't we have a small talk before we get to business?" the boy asked. "Not if you're going to treat me like I'm a peasant for not being a noble," Emma said. "All right. Sorry," the boy said. "I just wanted to ask how you completed the questions so quickly. I am used to being very good at answering, but even I took nearly 10 more minutes than you." "My hands move fast," Emma said. "And your mind?" he asked. "Were the answers correct?" "For the most part," Emma said. "I can't guarantee I got it all right, but I would be surprised if I got less than 95 points. That took the boy by quite a bit of surprise. "You're that confident?" he asked. Emma shrugged. "They were easy questions after all," she said. The boy tried to figure out where she was from and how she had come to learn for the test, but he managed to get nothing out of Emma. In the end, he was forced to walk away. "What a weird guy, right?" Emma asked. Lyra nodded her head vigorously. Emma wasn't sure she understood what she had meant, however. The next 2 hours in the field were not fun. Emma was bored out of her mind, waiting for something fun to show up. In the end, she ended up spending that time reciting the details of every beast she saw in the field. Finally, after 2 hours, the next text began. The second writing exam was entirely focused on beasts and knowledge about them. Emma looked through the questions and found all of them rather easy as well. Did I over-prepare for this? She wondered. She hadn't read materials that existed in this world and had instead learned everything directly from her father, who usually tended to have more information than everyone in the world combined. There were questions about differentiating between snakes and giving the description of a feather of a random bird. There were hand-drawn pictures of sea beasts and whatnot. Emma quickly wrote down the answers as freely as she could, albeit still quite fast, finishing way before anyone else. Amid gasps and surprises, she left the room once again. The practical exam was quite different from what Emma imagined it to be. She had expected the first practical exam to be about her essence rank and her uses of her essence, but it turned out to be regarding her beast. Lyra stood atop a table, which she was made to do by one of the examiners. Bigger beasts were dealt with on the floor. "She's 11 years old?" the examiner, a woman in her 50s, asked Emma. Emma nodded. "She is." "Wow. I don't believe I have seen a beast this physically young and yet this old in a long time," the woman said. "How could this happen? Did her parent perhaps have a rare gene that made her age slow? It couldn't be her cultivation base given how weak it is." There was no way for the woman to know that the cubs had the fortune of meeting her father from a young age, drinking miracle medicine to help them deal with pain, and practicing one of the greatest techniques in existence in Astoria. "I just found her like this in the Springwind continent," Emma said simply. "You're been to the other continent?" the woman couldn't help but ask her. Emma nodded. "It was 10 years ago, same as back when I found her," she said. "Ah, you must have been a child. I bet you don't even remember much," the woman said and started checking Lyra for things like defects and diseases. Emma barely held onto her smile from sneaking through at the woman's comments. "All right, doesn't look like she had many problems. Her core feels stable as well. She should reach the 5 senses improvement realm soon." "That is good news," the woman said. "And she seems quite docile. Does she fight?" "If I ask her to," Emma said. "But she's quite shy most of the time. Her twin brother on the other hand is quite active and will fight whenever I tell him to." "She has a twin?" the woman asked in surprise. "Is he for sale?" Emma narrowed her eyes. "No, he's with my father. I would have brought him too had 2 beasts been allowed in the institute." "Ah, my bad. My bad," the woman said. "Just tell her to do a few things from this list and as soon as she does it, you'll be done." Emma nodded and took the list. "Lyra, stand on your hind legs," Emma said. Lyra turned toward Emma, a little confused. "Hind legs? It means your 2 back legs. Stand on it, Emma clarified. Lyra stood on it and asked for a few seconds before landing back. She meowed like a cat, asking if she did it properly. Was that okay? Emma asked the examiner. Just follow the list. I can't tell you the results just yet, the woman said, writing something on her clipboard. Emma looked at Lyra and started commanding her to do things. Lick your right paw twice, then your left paw 1. Turn around 3 times. Greet the examiner. Get that packet. Close your eyes. There were simple but effective questions to see how well the beast understood the person and could follow their commands without questioning them or not complying. Lyra did everything as asked and didn't question anything. The woman tracked everything that was said and done between the two, and once Emma's last command was followed, she brought something out and placed it in front of the beast. It was a fish, still raw in some places, but smelled quite delicious. Lyra especially seemed attracted to the fish and slowly made her way to it. You lose if your beast eats it, the woman said simply to Emma, and you're not allowed to touch her, only vocal commands. Emma looked at the fish and Lyra. Lyra, you can't eat that, she said. Lyra stopped and looked at Emma with pleading eyes. But look tasty, she said. I know it looks tasty and probably smells it too, but you still can't eat that. If you do, I won't get to join this institute, Emma said. Lyra's face fell. Okay, Zam is. Emma chuckled a little. I told you not to say that. Lyra turned away from the tasty-smelling fish and walked to the other end of the table before sitting down with a slightly brooding expression. The woman couldn't help but look a little amused. It sounded like you could understand what the little one was saying for a second there, she said. I sometimes think I can understand her, Emma said. We're just close, I suppose. The woman gave a small smile. You can leave now. Emma nodded and picked up Lyra before walking away from the room. She noticed a few people looking toward her as she left, most directly being the James guy who either was fascinated by her or now held a deep grudge for beating him by finishing first in every test. There was no way to know yet. Emma had to wait for some time alone outside again before she had to take the final physical exam. This was what she had been expecting to have to take. A bunch of exams, based around essence and her application of it. The tests reminded her of what her father told her he had to take. Her essence rank was close to entering the essence sense realm, so she completed the simple tasks allocated to her where she had to use natural conduits. After completing the task, she was done with everything. She was done with the entrance exam. The results will be posted in 3 days. If you pass, make sure to contact the institute within the week. Once she heard that, she left. Everyone walked away from the institute, some happy, some sad. A plethora of emotions surrounded her, and even if she wanted to, she couldn't tell how they had done. She couldn't even tell how she had done. Am I having fun? She wondered at the mystery. No wonder Papa likes not knowing things all the time too. 3 days later, Ning got ready to leave for the core region with his daughter. Today was the day of the result of the institute's entrance exam. Emma was more than excited to find out how she had done. For the first time in forever, she had understood the feeling of nervousness, anxiety, and excitement all at once. Ning didn't want to ruin this experience for his daughter by telling her how she had done. He hadn't even learned about it himself just yet. The two of them walked by themselves, with no beasts with them this time. They arrived at the core region sometime later and made their way through the busy streets, making their way to the institute. When they arrived, they were surprised to see just how much crowd had gathered before them, and even more were pushing them forward from behind. Ning looked around and saw a large piece of paper posted on the wall for everyone to see. They were just too far to see it properly. Let's go closer. The names are there, Ning said, and pushed aside the people, making his way through the crowd by hurting as few people as possible. With his strength, he had to watch out for how much strength he exerted. They arrived at the front and finally saw the list of names and numbers. To their surprise, not only did it have those, but it also had points. The points were in the 3 digits, and from what they could see, it was out of 400. 100 points per exam for 4 exams, Emma explained to her father before searching for her name. Ning looked for it as well. There were a lot of single names that made her name hard to find immediately. So many nobles, Ning thought, and continued through. He decided to look from the start and immediately paused. Wait, are you first? He asked. What's your number? Huh? Emma turned her head to look toward the first of the pages and was surprised to see her name there. Just to make sure it was her, She looked at the entrance number and she matched. Next to it were 3 digits. 398. She had received 398 points. Whoa! Emma couldn't help but make a sound of her own. I did it. You did it, Ning said excitedly. I did it. Emma shrieked in happiness and hugged her father. They walked away from the crowd to an open space, both father and daughter with wide grins on their faces. They couldn't stop smiling at all. I got first place, Emma said softly. Do you think that has some advantages? A scholarship maybe? Ning said. I don't know. How do we find out? Emma asked. Should we go talk to the staff right away? Now that I think about it, we're supposed to contact them within the next 4 days. We can do that, Ning said. But first, who's the blonde guy that keeps staring at us? Emma got confused for a second and looked around before finding James staring at her. The moment their eyes met, he acted like he saw her for the first time and came to greet her. Hey, Emma, right? How are you doing? He asked, walking past Ning. I'm doing well, Emma said and didn't continue. The young man felt a little awkward and continued. Did you see the results yet? He asked. I did, Emma said. And? The boy asked. And what? Ning asked, wrapping his arm around the young man. If you want to know how well she did, you can go check on the rankings. I promise you that you won't miss her name. The young man gulped a little. He ignored Ning, looking at Emma. So was it you? The one that got first place? I was, Emma answered. Wow, congratulations, he said quickly. By the way, I was 4th. Is that so? Emma asked, internally realizing that she hadn't looked for any other names besides her own. The moment she saw it at the top, she ignored all else. It is, the young man said quickly. Do you mind if I ask how you did so well? I must say I'm quite stumped. My father helped me for the most part, Emma answered with a shrug. Your father, huh? The young man said. He must be a great man then. Oh, he thinks I'm a great man, Ning said with a grin. He patted the young man's shoulder. You will be a great man soon as well. The young man finally realized what was happening and stepped away from Ning to stare at him. You are her father? He asked. The name is Ning. You're James, right? Ning asked. James Noren, the young man said with obvious confusion in his eyes. He stared at Ning for a while before shaking himself out of it. My apologies, I did not expect you to be this young. You look like her brother. Thank you, Ning said with a smile. You guys can catch up later. If you don't mind, I have to get my daughter registered into the institute. Ning waved him goodbye and walked away. Emma followed him quickly. Why did you get so chummy with him? She asked. That wasn't necessary. Just because, Ning said. I think he likes you. Emma paused for a second. Is my illusion coming off? She asked in a panicked voice. No, you're fine on that note, Ning said. You would have a lot more people turning heads if your illusion wasn't working. Then I think that young boy is just confused, she said. He told me he's used to being the best, and now he's not. He wants to find out why not. I see, Ning said. That boy is definitely going through a variety of emotions though. Whatever, let's get you registered. Then we can go ahead and celebrate you passing the entrance exam. Sure, but that was only the entrance, Emma said. The real thing starts now. Emma's admission into the institute went rather easily. The staff that were gathered there, including the principal who was an old white-haired woman, gave friendly smiles to both Ning and Emma. They were practically begging them to not change her mind. It still cost her to enter though, as there were no such scholarship programs at the institute. But ending up first did give her benefits that she hadn't known were there otherwise. The 10 students with the highest points were all given single bedrooms. Most others had to share it with another student, or in some rare cases, even 3. This will change in a year when we take another, more serious test. It will be different from the entrance exam, and you will have to give away your room to someone else if you fail to get in the first 10 ranks there too. Emma didn't concern herself with something that was such a long time away. She had plenty of time to get strong, and plenty of time to get Lyra strong. Still, she nodded, letting the old woman know that she appreciated her words. I'm happy that our institute has received such an excellent student, the old woman said, and to think your family is not a nobility. One of the staff members handed Emma a small booklet to take with her, which explained everything she was required to bring or would need to provide for herself. Items like bedsheets, pillow covers, hygiene products, books, copies, etc. were listed in the book. It also listed that the students would have to provide their beasts with food by themselves or pay the institute some fee so the students didn't have to worry about food. Emma decided to go that route. Lyra was an omnivore, so Emma wouldn't have to worry about what she ate. She could survive on nearly anything. Later on, when she was stronger, she wouldn't even need that. You. A shrill voice took Emma out of her thoughts, forcing her to turn in that direction. Ning did so too. Betty pointed at her with rather large eyes, surprise filling them to quite a degree. Next to her was a gentleman with a fine suit, wearing a top hat. His fine mustache curled at the end, and he looked toward the two that Betty pointed toward. Bethany dear, it's not polite to point at people, the man said softly. Betty quickly lowered her hand swiftly, but her eyes remained on Emma. Hey, Betty. Emma spoke toward her with the slightest smile. Going to get registered? Yes, Betty said softly. You passed? Emma nearly chortled at the question. Did you not see my name out there? She asked. It's at the front, so you couldn't have missed it. The girl paused. Emma, she said softly, to herself. That was you? You're the Emma that got first place? I am, Emma answered. But how? Betty couldn't help but ask out loud. A week ago, you couldn't tell the difference between a yellow-scaled python and a bright lord snake. How did you suddenly get the first place? Emma's eyes narrowed. Surely you're not accusing me of cheating, right? She asked. No, I was just asking, the girl quickly said. I wasn't accusing you of anything. The man chuckled a bit. I haven't seen Bethany this flustered in a few years, the older man next to Betty said with a surprise. Are you Bethany's friend? We've talked a couple of times, but not enough to be friends yet, Emma said. I hope you will be. Little Beth doesn't have many friends, the man said with a warm smile. His eyes suddenly looked toward Ning with a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. He quickly returned his gaze to one of friendliness and spoke quickly. My apologies, I haven't introduced myself, he spoke. I am Bethany's father, Truven Briggs. The man reached out with his white-gloved hands. Ning reached out and grabbed it. I am Emma's father, Ning, he answered. Ning, it's nice to meet you, the man said. The pleasure's all mine. The man kept his grip on Ning for a bit longer than usual, and Ning understood what was going on. He hid his incoming grin and did something that made the man's eyes go wide. Then he let go of the arm and put an arm onto Emma, dragging her away. We're in a hurry, so we'll be leaving, Ning said. It was a pleasure meeting you both. And then he dragged Emma away. Truven Briggs stood where he was for a good 5 seconds before he pulled back his arm. He turned to see Ning walk away but did nothing to stop them. He could only stare at him. Betty looked at them walking away and then at her face, which was when she saw his shocked face. Daddy? She called out to him, tugging on his suit's cuffs. Are you okay? What's wrong? The older man took a few seconds to take a deep breath before opening his mouth to speak. That man, do you know who that is? How close are you with his daughter? He asked. Not really, Betty said. As she said, we only talked twice now. Why? Do you know her background by any chance? The father asked. No. What is this about Daddy? She asked. Her father, the man said slowly, thinking back to what he had sensed. He had sensed Emma's weaker essence rank and then had done the same with Ning's. When he did so, he had sensed his weak essence rank as well. However, along with it, he sensed an essence aura that wasn't normal at all. It had taken him a moment, but he had managed to figure out that it was lightning essence aura. If that was all, he would have only been surprised, not shocked. But in the end, Ning had suddenly switched his essence core from lightning to something the man had never sensed before. That had sent his mind reeling. He can't be a regular person at all, the man said softly. I'll have to find out more about him. You'll have to help me for it. Ning cooked up a feast in the large and spacious backyard that night, asking folks from all the surrounding houses to come grab a bite. Lady Layla was more than helpful in everything. She was happier about the entire thing than even Ning or Emma herself. Haddon sat to the side eating, where the light ended and shadow began. In the shadows, Umbra stayed with her 2 children, enjoying the feast as well. People came one by one, slowly causing a festive atmosphere to form around the backyard. When they learned why the feast was, they all came to Emma to congratulate her. Many talked to Ning as well, trying to discern what their new neighbor was like. Learning that he was a converter made them give sad smiles toward him, almost as if they didn't think he would last very long. A few kids noticed Umbra at some point, but it was very quickly that Ning managed to tell them that it was safe. With how many beasts there were in Ulharis City, none of the people were particularly afraid afterward. Emma even led some kids to play with Umbra, and after a while, they were all acclimated to her being there. Layla introduced him to Juna's parents. Even though they were right next door, Ning hadn't had the opportunity to talk with them. After talking to the general store couple, he moved on to other people. Some were tailors, and some were butchers. One man even worked in selling fine jewelry. One girl came to him after a while, belonging to one of the houses on the opposite side of theirs. She hesitated about what she wanted to say for a while before coming out with it. "Are you hiring?" the girl asked. She was about the same age as Juna, maybe a few years older. Her sharp blue eyes were visible even in the firelight that mostly lighted up the area around Ning. "Hiring?" Ning asked in surprise. No, not really." "Are you sure?" the girl asked. Ning scratched his head a little. "I'm gonna be honest," he said. "I renovated the shop nearly a week ago, and in that time, only 3 people have come, none of whom have bought anything. I do plan on hiring a staff or 2 in due time, but as it is now, I cannot afford to," Ning said. "I can do whatever you need to. Even if you want me to sweep the floor, talk to customers. I'm an excellent saleswoman too," the girl added. "I'm sorry, but you'll have to use your skills elsewhere. There is nowhere else that will take my skills. The 4 shops have taken in every good converter they can get their hands on, and due to that, I'm forced to stay jobless," the girl said. Ning paused for a moment. He took in the girl with his eyes first, and then his senses. She was someone in the essence manifestation realm, which surprised him to find out. "You're a converter?" he asked her. "Yes," the girl nodded. "Was that not obvious?" "You never mentioned when you asked for a job," Ning said. "How was I supposed to know?" "Because I'm joining a weapons shop." "Yes, but there are many things to do in a weapons shop," Ning answered. "Oh, right, my bad," the girl said, realizing her mistake. "Does that mean you're hiring?" "Still no," Ning said. "Same reasoning too. Why don't you just join one of the 4 shops? You don't have to be like me, to work individually." "I can't," the girl said, shaking her head. "They have tests to see how good your skills are, and I've never passed them. I fear I may never." "They have tests?" Ning asked, failing to hide his surprise. "They told me to join them without any sort of tests." "You probably caught their eyes or something," the girl answered. "The rest of us have to take tests, and can only join them once we are successful. I am not exactly bad when it comes to converting, but those people require me to turn the items into shapes that make them look unique and appealing to the eyes. I failed during that." "I see," Ning said. "I hope you find a job soon enough." The girl nodded rather sadly and turned to leave. Before she did, however, she looked at Ning once more and said something. "What if the reason you haven't sold anything is because you don't have a good salesperson? Try paying me for the first month or 2, and see if I end up being an investment," the girl said. The girl was trying to sell herself. To Ning's surprise, he did feel like hiring her. At least, he needed someone to look after the shop while he was away, and Haddon for sure wasn't going to be the one to do so. He rubbed his bare chin in thought and asked, "How much will you be willing to take for the first month?" The girl's eyes widened. She slammed her chest with a thump. "I'm confident enough that I will be happy with 5% of all sales during the first month. Is that okay with you?" she asked. "We can renegotiate the salary once the month is over." Ning was impressed. "All right, you're hired," he said. "Come to the shop around 7 in the morning tomorrow. I'll show you things then." The girl's eyes brightened with delight. "Thank you so much." She paused. "Sorry, I didn't catch your name." Ning quickly answered. "And I didn't catch yours either." "Rova," the girl said. "The name is Rova. I live in that house over there." Ning nodded. "Thank you for the job," she said excitedly. "I'll see you tomorrow, Ning." I should call you boss now." "Call me whatever you find comfortable," Ning said. "Sure, boss." Then she walked away. The feast lasted for another hour. People danced and sang as everyone was together. And as the night cold came creeping in, they left one by one until the feast was no longer. On the morning of Emma and Lyra's departure to the institute, 6 humans and 3 beasts gathered outside Hiran's love. Ning, Hadan, Layla, and Rova were there to see Emma away. Juna, who was on her way to her job, had agreed to take the young girl to the institute. Ning had wanted to do so himself, but Emma had protested. This was her journey, so she wanted to take the first step by herself. Lyra had been okay with leaving all until the point they had to. She was still ready to go, but she cried next to her mother after it only said on her how long she would be away. "Listen to Sister Emma and all will be well," Umbra told her daughter. "If you miss me, just let her know and I will come." Lori stood by the side, not particularly emotional about his twin sister leaving for long. He was more excited about what he was promised after she would be gone. Battles in the arena. "I'll see you guys later." Emma waved goodbye and walked away with Lyra and Juna. With them gone, everyone returned to their task. Lady Layla went to prepare the lunch for the day, Hadan returned to rest after all the beatings he had gotten this morning, and Ning returned to the open space behind the house where he had been making more weapons to sell. He had reached the essence manifestation realm with 3 of his cores in the past half a month, so his overall improvement in the quality of the weapons he could make had been massive as well. As such, Ning was making more and more weapons and armor, and sometimes even trinkets to replace what he made while he was weaker just a month ago. He hadn't yet replaced everything he made, as some of them didn't need replacing. Others he never put on a shelf as there was not enough space. He wished the space was larger. He even wanted to make it so, but he would need a bit more essence than just this for that. He was halfway through making a silver bow when Rova walked to the back. It had been 3 days since the girl had taken up her job as the sales staff of the shop, and as of yet, she had made no sale. Ning didn't tell her anything about it just yet, as she was still getting used to the shop. He noticed her arrival, but he didn't stop. The girl didn't speak either and waited for Ning to finish. Once the silver bow was made completely, Ning put it into his storage and looked toward her. "Why have you abandoned the shop?" he asked her. "Hadan is watching for the moment," the girl said. "I thought of something, boss." Ning looked at her and saw that she was waiting for him to say something. Continue. "I think I know why we're not selling anything," she said. Ning watched her eyes wide with glee as if she truly had discovered something he had missed. "What?" he asked. "We don't sell anything, because nobody knows who we are," she said as a matter of fact. Ning didn't know how to react to such an obvious statement. He nodded slowly. "I know," he said. "We tried pamphlets for a few days to advertise the shop, but it didn't work." "No, no, no," the girl quickly said, moving her hands in a gesture of disapproval as if swiping away flies. "Not flyers or pamphlets. People don't like advertising, especially when it is done to their face. You need to be more subtle in the way you advertise something." Ning was a little interested. "Go on." The girl lifted a finger. "What do we sell?" she asked. "Weapons, armor, converted artifacts," Ning answered, waiting for where she was going with this. She raised another finger in her other hand. "And who do we sell it to?" she asked. "Our target customer," Ning thought. "Anyone that wants to arm or defend themselves. Mostly essence experts." "Yes," the girl said. "But more importantly, it's someone who wants to fight, or expects to be in one." Ning nodded. She touched those 2 fingers. "So if we want to advertise our items, we need to do it to these people specifically." That made sense to Ning. The last time Ning had sold something, it had been in a world with Shi where everyone who was anyone wanted to buy artifacts from him. Even when he made hundreds of thousands of them, he would be missing out on thrice that number of customers. As a result, he never had to worry about what to sell or who to sell it to. If he made it, they bought it. Some even requested something to be made. As a result, he hadn't managed to figure out how to sell his artifacts in the few days he had opened his shop. "What do you suggest?" he asked her. "I suggest we go to a place where we can fight all 3 things," she said. "A place with fighters, a place with artifacts, and a place with people to advertise to." Ning had an idea of what she was talking about, and before she could even say it, he responded. "The arena?" he asked her. The girl nodded fervently, her hair bobbing up and down. "We advertise to the people in the arena?" he asked as much as he talked to himself. "Do you use flyers again? But you said that wouldn't work." "No, not flyers," the girl said. "We need to be subtle, remember. So, Instead of giving out the advertisement, we just have to keep it there for them to see. We should hire some fighters to take our weapons and have them fight in the arena. When they win, they can. Ning stopped her before she could finish. Brilliant idea, he said with a wide grin. But we don't need to hire fighters. I alone am enough. The silver bow flew back out into his hand. It's been a while since I properly fought in a battle. Ning walked down the road at a swift pace, Lori almost running to keep pace with him. Rova was doing the same with a frantic look on her face. Boss, you really should reconsider it, she said. We should ask someone to help us advertise. You can't possibly go and fight in the arena. Sure I can, Ning said. What's stopping me? But you're not strong. You'll get hurt, Rova said, a hint of exasperated look on her face that she found hard to hide. You're not even that strong. Ning looked back at her without stopping with a face that could have held a frown. Why wouldn't I be strong? I have reached the essence manifestation realm. That doesn't mean you're strong, the girl said. You're just a converter. We really should hire someone. Let's just watch for today. Okay. We can find someone who looks like he fights well or lacks weapons, and we can sponsor him. We can even find some good-looking men to attract the girls to our shops. I'm good-looking, Ning said. Am I not? The girl didn't know what to say, but anger took hold of her. No, you're not, she said. She nearly stumbled at the look that Ning gave her. I mean, she quickly realized what she said and had to take back a bit. I mean, you're not bad-looking, but I don't think there will be many girls that would fall for you. Are you sure? Ning asked. He flexed his biceps a little. I have some muscles if that is what girls like. Why are you worried about what girls like? The girl asked suspiciously. Don't you have a wife? Won't Emma's mother get angry if she finds out you're talking this way? Ning glowered at her. You're the one that brought it up, he said and turned away, marching even faster, making the girl have to nearly sprint to follow up with him. She didn't know if he was doing it on purpose or not anymore. They arrived at the arena sometime later. Lori rode on Ning's shoulder as they arrived, clearly tired halfway through from having to run for most of the way. Rova didn't show much tiredness, but as an essence manifestation realm individual, it would have been surprising if she had. Lori, go with Rova, Ning said quickly. I'll have to go find the place to register. I'll show you, Rova said. I've been here a few times. Ning looked at her curiously. You fought? He asked. My older brother liked to fight, she said. I would come here with him when I was little. Where is he now? Ning asked. With his wife, in Snowdon. He's a city guard there, Rova told him. Snowdon, Ning mumbled a little. That's north of the Empire, is it not? It is, the girl said. Let's go get you registered. Ning nodded. The area for registration was dug into the walls of the ground itself, in the crater that was the arena. The area there was cooler, with long hallways that never heated, no matter how strong the sun was. Torches lit up the hallway. Not objects made out of light. It gave the arena a proper aura to it, or so Ning thought. Multiple people came and went, none stopping to look at one another. Rova stopped in front of a line and looked around at the people who were gathered there for registration. There, that man, she pointed. He's good looking. What do you say? No, Ning said quickly. We're not doing this again. I thought we were over this. Ugh. The girl scowled a little. I was only worried about you. If you don't want it, then fine. They arrived by the man who dealt with the registration a few minutes later, who looked up to Ning and Lori from his seat. Your name? Ning. Man or beast? Man. Rova answered before Ning had the chance to. Ning nodded after her. The man judged Ning's essence and wrote down something. He tore off a piece but didn't hand it immediately. 5 fire coins for a match, he said. You get the next one for 2 if you win. Great, Ning said and quickly handed over the coins. The man handed him the paper he had torn off. Be ready for when you're called, he said, and Ning took it. Rova pulled Ning to the side while Ning looked confused. He didn't ask me who I was supposed to fight, he said. He did. You'll fight a man, Rova said. Oh, I thought that was him asking if it's me or Lori fighting, Ning said. No, the beasts are registered on the other side. There's a larger entrance there, she said. Ning nodded and walked back out. As per the slip, his fight was going to be the 43rd match of the day. It's still morning and there are already 42 other matches prepared? He asked in surprise. Rova looked at his paper and pointed at something. That's for stage 2, she pointed. 43rd match of the second stage. There are 4 different stages, so we'll never know how many fights there have already been set. Damn, Ning said. Well, we've got to give it to the fighters, I suppose. Boss, Rova called out. Are you sure? Are you really sure that you want to do this? Ning smiled back at her this time, not a single hint of anger or annoyance in his face. There's not a single thing in this world that can hurt me. So don't worry. Weirdly, that did give the girl a bit of confidence that she didn't think she would get. I guess all I can do now is wish you luck then. They sat for a while, watching battles take place in the arena, all of which they watched contently. Ning planned on how he was going to put on a show for the shop, so when his turn came, he walked out with not a single doubt in his mind. See you in a bit. Ning arrived at the large stage that was separated into 4 different quadrants. Each one of those quadrants was supposed to be a stage by themselves. He couldn't hear anything but muffled shouts from not just the audience in the arena but also the other fighters on the stage. It took him a moment to realize that he was even having a hard time seeing through them, all sight blurred to his vision. Was this something that was done by the arrays? He was quite curious about the arrays now. He wanted to learn more. But for now, it was his fight that mattered. A man in his late 20s appeared in front of him, with a thick beard and a shaved head. He had a leather armor strapped onto his chest, leaving his beefy suntanned arms bare for everyone to see. On one hand, he held a fiery axe with the edges jagged, as if they were the shape of flames themselves. On his other hand, he held an elaborate earth shield, with pieces of rocks forming the image of a beast that was a lion or something similar. The man glared at Ning, more to intimidate him than anything, but Ning only looked back nonchalantly. That seemed to anger the man more than anything Ning could have said. Get your weapons ready. A voice drifted in between them as a woman looked at the both of them. The referee of the arena. Ning brought out a blue trident, with a slender shaft and 3 prongs at the end, each of equal length and equally sharp. The man gave a confused look after seeing the weapon, as it didn't stand out as anything more than just that, a weapon. It was as if one made it with little care for what it looked like. Those sorts of weapons weren't easy to find in the Ulharis city and were more often than not looked down on. Although, the man did wonder what it was made up of. The blue color made him think it was water or ice, but he had seen them and this one looked different. If you are ready, the woman looked on either side and the fighters got on their stances. Fight. The man acted the moment the match began. He slashed his axe forward, sending a stream of fire billowing forward. Ning switched to his sound core and created a small pulse of sound that caused the air to push forward, dissipating the fire before it landed on him. Then, immediately, he switched to lightning core and poured lightning essence into the lightning trident he held in his hand. He pointed the trident forward and 3 bolts of lightning struck around the man. One to his left, one to his right, and one right in between his legs. The pure confusion of what he had just witnessed filled the man, forcing him to look all around to see if it wasn't just him. The referee was equally confused as she was surprised, and she looked at Ning, hoping for some answers. No doubt the rest of the audience members were doing the same. Ning only gave them a cheeky little grin and held his trident in one hand before gesturing to the man to continue with his other hand. He had come here to make a demonstration. He wasn't going to win or lose so early on. The man attacked, using his techniques this time around, flinging out multiple large rocks at Ning. Ning danced. A trident was nothing more than a spear with 3 heads instead of 1, and a spear was nothing but just another limb for him. The movement came as easy to him as walking. He weaved through the thrown rocks. He destroyed some, dodged others, and something tossed one back toward the man. His hands moved in a blur, the blue trident equally blurred except for the blue trail it left behind. From time to time, it slipped out as small bolts of lightning struck the ground around him, and that happened enough times that the man was certain now that the trident was made up of lightning. He couldn't imagine how one could capture lightning to make such a thing. When the streams of rocks ended, Ning sensed earth essence beneath him and jumped. Rock spikes appeared below, nicking a side of his leg but did not damage. Ning flipped in the air and sent a bolt of lightning next to the man before he could channel his essence into his weapons. Falling, he threw his trident into one of the rock spikes where it stuck stiffly, and he landed on the trident. He crouched on the trident's shaft and looked at the man down below. "Come on," he said in a mocking voice. Surely you can do more than just this. He made a yawning gesture as well. If he wanted the fight to become more bombastic, he would have to taunt the man into using more and more attacks, so he could show off more. The battle lasted for nearly 5 more minutes, in which Ning only used lightning bolts to surprise the man more than anything for the majority of the fight. If the attack landed, the man would immediately lose. Ning also didn't use any of his techniques except for when he had to protect himself, and fought the majority of the battle with just the lightning trident. By the time he won with a simple kick to the man's stomach, the majority of the crowd was cheering for him, even though he couldn't hear them properly. But they can hear me, Ning thought with a smile, and raised the trident, sending out bolts of lightning that streaked toward the sky in multiple directions. The surprise alone shocked the crowd into silence. "This is the lightning trident," Ning shouted, aided by his sound essence when he saw people no longer speak. "Tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon, I will be selling this to the highest bidder in my shop Heron's Love. Make sure you come." Gregory Norin was a thin man with a large forehead, bushy eyebrows, and a scar across his left cheek that hadn't fully healed. He was a distant cousin of Brassel Norin, the head of the Norin household, the mayor of Ulharis City. Yesterday evening, he was made aware of news during a gambling session in one of the taverns about a particular display that had been put on in the arena. He had relayed it to the mayor, but it seemed his cousin had already heard of it. He had then been ordered to confirm the validity of the statement, and if possible buy the weapon. Gregory trusted the news as much as any sane person would, but the amount of sources he had heard the news from had forced him to reconsider. With the mayor's command on top of it, he had to make sure if it was true or false. After searching for nearly 2 hours, he arrived in front of the shop that everyone and their mother were talking about in the city right now. Heron's Love. This is definitely it, he muttered under his breath as he looked at the amount of people that were gathered there, not just inside the shop, but outside as well. There was no place to step in. Could he even take a step in here? He tried to look for ways to go in when he heard a boy not even 15 saying something that he seemed to have reiterated hundreds of times today. "Please stay in a line. Everyone will be allowed to make a bid in their own time. We won't let anyone leave without putting on a bid." The boy's tired voice went through the people again. But no one seemed to care for what he said and tried to go in as soon as they could. "Oh, everyone puts on a bid," Gregory thought, and looked at the boy. "Hey kid, what is the highest bid right now?" A few faces turned toward him before turning toward the boy with fervent curiosity. "I don't know," the boy said listlessly, as if he would want to be doing anything else. "I only know that no one will know either. Everyone will get a chance to bid, and they will do so in secret. In the end, whoever bids the highest will get the trident. Please consider how much you're willing to bid, as you'll only get to do so once." A few newcomers asked more questions, and Gregory managed to learn more about the shop than he expected. "So it's new, is it?" he thought. "You should have remained low, whoever you are," the man thought. "Don't complain about getting cut when you stick out as a thorn." Due to the number of people there, it took him nearly another hour of standing in the sun before he made his way into the shop. To his surprise, the shop was better looking inside than it was on the outside. He looked around with a weird look on his face. Why are the shelves half empty? He wondered, looking at the weapons and armor that were still there. Well, those certainly aren't very good. His thoughts paused when he saw the prices attached to the weapons. "What?" he nearly shouted in shock. He quickly looked around to make sure he hadn't spoken out loud, not that anyone would have noticed in the hubbub of the shop. What sort of idiot sells weapons and armor at 150 fire coins? He thought. His first thought had been that everything the shop sold was simple and needed no further glances, but the cost had turned his opinion upside down. If the weapons cost what they did, then it was more than a bargain. No wonder so many in the shop were missing. Surely most of them had been sold already. He wondered if he should buy one as well, but then he already had all the weapons he could need. And he didn't have money to spare right now. He had lost a bit last night while gambling. "I'll come back once I earn more," he thought. 15 minutes later, he was at the front of the line with a slip of paper on the table and a pen next to it. Behind the table was a young man, and next to him was the lightning trident everyone talked about. Damn, so it was real, Gregory thought. Write your name and the amount you wish to bid. Gregory quickly took the pen and wrote his name. As for the bid, "Young man, what's the highest bid?" he asked. "I don't know," Ning answered him. "Everything goes in that box. I won't know until I open it at the end." The man felt a little annoyed at not knowing how much to bid. How is this an auction? He grumbled under his breath. Did the shop's owner ever even go to an auction? Young man, who's the owner of the shop? Gregory asked. She lives upstairs, Ning said. Why? I am the manager. If you want to talk to someone, you can talk to me. The man frowned a bit. How could such a young man be a manager? Still, he had to trust him, not that it mattered. He went close and whispered. I was sent here by the mayor, Ning put up his hand. I have had 3 other people sent by the mayor, 14 by some governor, 2 by the owner of the arena, 10 by some teachers in the institute, and countless more carrying names of noble families whose names I don't bother to remember. Put your name, your bid, and leave. I give everyone a fair chance. Gregory was slack-jawed at the words. He tried to say something, but nothing came. In the end, he could only do what he was told to do and left. He waited outside for 2 hours, and 2 hours later the news came. The one who has bid the highest bid 4,800 fire coins. If you wish to come get it right away, come. Or you can come at any time afterward within the next 3 days. A man quickly walked up the stairs and gave his name that Gregory didn't recognize. He went in and came back out with a satisfied smile. Gregory couldn't believe it. The owner of the lightning trident was some person who was certainly nothing more than a visitor in the city. A tourist got it. Damn it. The man thought. I should have bid more than 3,000. He hadn't been aware of how low he had bid until the end. Sounds of grumbling passed through the street in front of the shop as people turned to leave. Everyone was disappointed by not winning the thing. One more thing. Ning quickly spoke before people could get too far away. Tomorrow I will reveal another weapon in the arena, and the day after that I will auction it off here. I will do so for a month before I start putting the items on display without showing them off. You may come to get it again. Tomorrow. Gregory thought. Another one? Another lightning trident? Or something new? He didn't know, but he wanted to. And he was sure, more people than just him would want to know. Rova's eyes were wide as a goose egg as she stood in front of the thousands of fire coins that lay before her. It was night and the shop was closed already. It was time for her to leave as well, but the money in front of her kept her from going immediately. Ning smiled as he looked at her gleeful face. They were all happy. It wasn't just her though. Even Haddon and Layla had come down and were gawking at the pile in front of them. 14,750, the girl said with excitement. 14,750. Wait, Ning said quickly. First, let me take out Miss Lila's share. It's in the contracts. Rova tried to calm herself down and waited for Ning and Layla to get done with their share first. 150 coins for my month of rent. Ning pushed aside a small chunk of the money for Layla. Then he pushed out a larger chunk toward her. And 3,200 coins for the 75% you get from your husband's weapons being sold. The old woman blinked in disbelief. Wait, 3,200 coins? She asked, surprising herself when he spoke out the words. Yes, Ning said. I sold over 4,200 coins worth of your items. Those were the ones I prioritized really. The old woman couldn't believe it. Tears filled her eyes and she quickly wiped it away. Hiran would be happy to find out so many of his items were sold in just a single day. Nind didn't doubt he would. From what he had heard from the woman, even selling 3 weapons a month had been a difficult task 10 years ago when her husband was alive, and now it was hard enough to sell one in a month. She had been living on the bare minimum to just survive. She didn't know what to do with this much money. I'll have to think of things. Ning didn't say anything and looked at the excited Rova. 5%, was it not? He asked her. The girl gave a confused look before quickly nodding as excitement filled her once again. 5% of the 14,750 would be, what? The girl said loudly. Ning paused. What's wrong? Am I taking 5% from everything we sold today? She asked. Not just the ones that were yours? Ning looked from her to Layla, then back to her. I promised you, didn't I? For all the sales that are done in the first month, you'll get 5%, and I meant all of it. The girl's eyes could not go any wider. 5% of that is 750 when rounded up, Ning said. Why don't you take 800? Ning gave her 800 fire coins. The girl could only stare at the coins that came her way. 800 fire coins. In a city where 200 fire coins were enough to live freely for the month, she had received 800 in a single day. That was not something she had expected to ever earn. 800 fire coins in a single day. When she first took the job, she had been happy to earn anywhere close to 100 in a single month, given the shop's status. She was making do with what she could by making fire coins of her own, but the best she could do was make a dozen or so every few days it took her to fill her core again. Are you sure? Rova asked, her hands already grabbing onto the 800 coins as if she was worried Ning would take it. Did you want more? Ning asked her. No, the girl quickly said, taking the coins into her storage. Thank you, boss. Ning said nothing and looked back at the pile of coins he still had. 4,000 were gone, but that was still less than a third of the entire thing. Ning separated around 500 coins and pushed them toward Haddon. Haddon looked back in surprise, not understanding what was happening. You've worked hard enough, so you deserve some too, Ning said. The young man was surprised to see so many coins, and unlike Rova, he didn't hesitate. Thank you, teacher, he said, quickly reaching for the coins. However, before he could get to it, Ning took the coins back. You have nowhere to keep it, he said. I'll keep it for you until the day you can use that necklace with your own power. Haddon reached to his necklace with his left hand, thought for a moment, and nodded. I will do as you say, teacher, he said. Ning took away everything else. All right, we should go back now, he said. You especially, Rova. Your parents will want you back. I am a grown woman, thank you. I can stay out as long as I want, she said with a snort. Besides, I need to go buy something expensive to feed my parents. They will want to celebrate my earnings. As you say. Once Rova was gone, Ning and Haddon went to get dinner with Layla. Throughout the dinner, Ning could only wonder what it was that he should showcase the next day. He had made a few interesting artifacts, but most of them had been made out of sheer curiosity, and he couldn't exactly sell those ones. Not yet at least, he thought. I'll have to start slow. If they see the other ones, I will have the empire after me. On that note, there was also the chance of people coming to steal from his shop at night. Should I keep guard? He thought but quickly shook his head. That wouldn't be needed. If they do come, I hope they will be happy meeting Umbra, he thought. He couldn't help but chuckle as he thought about the possibilities. Oh wait, he spoke out loud. What's wrong? Layla asked. I just got an idea for what to make for tomorrow, Ning said. What will you make? Layla asked. If you want to know, you can come watch me in the arena tomorrow, Ning said. It will definitely be something no one will be expecting. Before Ning could even leave the shop, there were already people outside waiting to go along with him. When he got out, he was bombarded with questions about what he was going to show this time and if it was as good as the lightning trident. People seemed to have truly loved the lightning trident and were more than saddened by the fact that they couldn't get their hands on it. Ning simply told them to wait for a match. They would see it easily in the arena today. People still talked with him, conversing for the sake of conversation, trying to get close to him, trying to learn who he was and where he was from. They quickly saw that Ning wanted to give no answer as to who he was exactly and moved away from the topic. Rova walked along with him, glancing around at the few people that surrounded them. Her eyes fell on a few and she closed in on Ning to speak in a hushed voice. I think 3 of those are from the 4 shops, she said. I think I've seen them before in the shops or when I went to try and get a job. Ning didn't look back. It doesn't matter, he said. Everyone is free to see what I'm about to do. Not like I can stop them now, can I? Rova said nothing and simply nodded. What have you made though? She asked. Is it the bow from last time? No, Ning said. The bow is a little too strong to just show like this. I have made something else. Something that can be considered a step above simple. Rova was very curious now. They arrived at the arena and even there he could feel a few gazes on him. He made his way to the registration hall when he registered for the 45th match. I thought I had arrived early, he thought but gave no more thought to the match number. It was actually better if it was during the day. People would be free to come watch the fight. More people tried to make conversation with him here and Ning was more than happy this time. However you could pass his time, he would. The people that gathered around him were mostly male, and they were all from one noble family or another, all wanting to make friends with him. He was invited to a few of them, claiming they had a party held for one of their family members entering the institute. Ning only told them he would give it some thought. Numerous battles were fought on the stage below, one after another, and soon enough, it was Ning's turn to fight again. "Let me be off then," he said, and everyone excitedly let him go. There was nothing he had sold in his shop that had been any good at all. It was only the lightning trident that had brought everyone here. However, if whatever he was going to show was going to be half as good as that, they would gladly throw money at his feet. Ning arrived on the stage, and once again the silence of the stage surrounded him. He looked forward and saw his opponent. It was a girl with blue braided hair wearing tight-fit clothes made of mostly cotton, but she was wearing thick armor around her upper body made of fire. She held a slightly curved sword in her hand, the blade of which was serrated in an oddly wave-like pattern. The bright yellow sword was most definitely made up of light. This should be fun, he thought, bringing out his own weapon. It was this weapon that most people were here to see. What came out of Ning's hand was a very unorthodox weapon. Two short scythes appeared on his hands, like curved daggers that were barely any big at all. The two scythes lay on each of his hands, neither of them showing anything other than their shape. The scythes were completely black with almost no texture to them at all. From far away, people couldn't even see where the blades ended and where the handle began. Not that there was any difference in the first place. Ning prepared for the battle, and the girl got ready for the fight to start as well. As soon as the fight began, the girl attacked first, sending a pillar of light flying toward Ning. Ning put the two weapons in front of him and blocked the attack with just them. When the light disappeared, he took one step back, and to everyone's surprise, threw one of the scythes directly at the girl. The girl hadn't expected Ning to throw the weapon, but she was as alert as she could have been, so dodging was easy. The scythe flew past her and she gave it no attention. She turned around, trying to use her fire armor to attack this time when suddenly Ning jerked back his other scythe. Her confusion lasted only a second as something struck her from the back. The girl barely managed to see a black smear along her vision, flying past her. "What?" she couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. What flew past her was the scythe. How? She couldn't understand how the scythe was pulled back. She hadn't felt him use any essence at all. She looked at the two scythes again and wondered if they were tied together, but she couldn't see any rope or thread at all. Ning threw the scythe once again, and the girl parried it aside. This time, she paid careful attention to everything. She looked at the scythe she threw away and saw nothing tied to it. However, she did see something else. The scythe flew back at her, and the girl easily dodged this time, sending back a ball of fire that streaked toward Ning even as the scythe returned to Ning. At that moment, a wall of shadows emerged from right where Ning was and the fire was swallowed with nothing remaining. When the wall receded, the girl became aware that the weapons her opponent was using were made of shadows itself. Shadow, the girl thought, eyes narrowing to a slit as she got serious all of a sudden. She had been wondering what the essence was, but never had she expected to see shadow. It was a very rare essence in the Blue Flame continent. Good thing I have a light sword, she thought. Surely light and shadow countered each other to some level. She hoped so at least. This was too new for her to be sure about anything. Ning threw the scythe in his right hand again, the weapon flying toward her like a dagger. She struck it aside quickly. Why does he keep throwing it? Why not just use the weapon for what it is, a conduit? She wondered. The thoughts vanished quickly though as another thought took over. She needed to search for the string the flying scythe was attached to. It had to be. There, she noticed something she hadn't noticed before. While the string or thread or whatever the scythe was attached to was transparent or thin to the point that she couldn't see it, it did leave a shadow beneath her with the sun overhead. She saw Ning pull back the scythe and immediately turned to look at the other scythe fly toward her. But she didn't panic and kept calm. The shadow of the thread that combined the two weapons was there, so she just had to cut the thread. With the scythe flying, she knew just where to cut the thread. She would cut the thread right at the base of the scythe's handle. Her light sword glowed bright, and she swung down in an overhead strike, attacking right along the thread. Her eyes went aghast as she sensed nothing. Her sword felt no contact. No tension that she cut, no object it touched. She had cut nothing. There had been nothing. How? She couldn't help but voice it out loud. I cut the, how is there nothing? She wanted to know. This was just too mysterious for her to keep calm and to herself. And with that, she did exactly what Ning had wanted her to do, ask questions. As if a showman, He flourished the sides in his hand, spinning it around a few times before holding it tightly. His stance loosened and he stood up straight, as if not going to fight, and started speaking. "This is a weapon I made," he said, showing the two sides. "Did you notice how I said, is and not, are? That's because these two sides are in fact part of the same weapon." The girl looked confused and even the referee to the side didn't understand what was going on. "What are you talking about?" the girl asked. "These two sides are one," he said before quickly tossing one away. At the same time, he pulled on another side and the first one came flying back. The girl's eyes narrowed. "Are you saying what you do to the first one happens to the other one too?" she asked. "No," Ning said before dropping to a thought. "Although that would make for an amazing weapon. I'll have to see. But then again I don't know if that can be made with essence. Might have to use mana or chi." "What?" the girl asked. "Nothing," Ning said quickly. "It's not like what you said. The two sides are tied together, that's all." "No, they're not. I tried cutting whatever was tied between them. There was nothing." "But there was," Ning said, tapping his foot on the floor where the shadow of the thread that tied them was still there. "Yes, I can see the shadow, but what you tied it with doesn't exist." "Oh no, this is not the shadow of what ties them together," Ning said before giving a large grin. "This is the shadow that ties them together." The girl took a long moment to try and understand before asking. "What?" She thought she heard something incorrectly. There was some sort of hidden meaning to his words that she... Wait, her eyes fell on the group where the thin shadow moved from the shadow of one side to the other. "No, their shadow. Their shadow is what is tied together." "Exactly." Ning's beaming smile was seen by everyone in the audience, and he had no doubt numerous questions were popping up all around him. "The two weapons are in fact a single weapon created using shadow essence and shadow, and during its creation, I created the conjoining line to be the shadow itself," he said. He waited for people to speak amongst themselves, voicing questions and confusions that wouldn't reach him. The girl in front of him though did a fine job replacing them. "How is that possible?" the girl asked. "How can you make a weapon where there is nothing? There is nothing physical connecting the two things." "Nobody said there had to be," Ning said. "You can hold the light in your hand, and you get surprised when I tell you shadow connects these two things?" The girl paused. "I just haven't seen anything like this before." "I don't doubt that," Ning said. He didn't doubt there were many more things he could do during the creation of conduits that hadn't even become known to be possible in this world yet. One would have to go to some other advanced worlds with essence energy to find out what could truly be done with it. He had a hunch that they weren't using arrays to nearly as well as they should have been used. No, he knew it. "So, do you understand what this is exactly?" he asked the girl after she was silent for a while. "Kind of," she said. "But it is more of a physical weapon than a conduit, is it not?" "I haven't shown everything it can do just yet," Ning said. "Let me not waste time and get on with it." The girl sensed unknown essence being used around Ning and prepared herself for some sort of attack. In the next instance, a large puddle of darkness poured around Ning's feet and in that puddle he fell, vanishing from the stage itself. The sudden vanishing of Ning brought a layer of confusion to the whole battle that the girl could not handle. She felt essence around her and could vaguely sense where Ning was, but it wasn't accurate at all. At best, she could only tell that he was beneath her. As for the preciseness, it would have to wait until Ning appeared again. As she thought that, Ning surfaced behind her, and the vagueness turned firm as she knew exactly where he saw. A glow surrounded her, immediately blinding everyone who watched her before she quickly turned around to cut at Ning with her sword. He had caught him off guard, and this was the best time too. The sword stopped like it had hit a wall. The light vanished and a smiling Ning emerged from the brightness, the two sides of his hands firmly interlocking the sword in between them. His smile grew wider and he tore the sword apart. The girl shrieked in panic. The broken sword suddenly turned into a bright flash of light and disappeared from right in front of everyone, and Ning vanished back into a pool of shadow. A moment later, he appeared further away from the girl. "You!" the girl growled in a low voice. Ning looked at her and gave a rueful smile. "I will give you one later," he quickly told the girl. "I have a few light swords." The girl was still seething in anger, but it lessened a bit after hearing him. She nodded slowly but snorted all the same. Ning said nothing and instead created a vortex of shadow in front of him that quickly turned into a spike that flew toward the girl. The spike hit the girl right in the chest and she was thrown far away. The fight was over. People cheered all around him, but Ning didn't celebrate his fight at all. He just looked at his scythe, wondering if he had won a bit too early. Did he have anything more to show? No, that's all, he thought and quickly turned all around, excitedly raising his hands in cheers. He couldn't hear anything and he could barely see vague figures constantly moving in the seats beyond the barrier. He didn't wait to leave right away and quickly spoke up. I call this the twin shadow scythes. A single weapon with two bodies attached together by a thin line of shadow that can extend for a long distance, longer than the length of the empire itself. If it goes over that distance, it comes back to you through the shadow, and no one will be able to stop you. Aside from that, it is also very special in that the weapons have techniques attached to them that you don't even have to learn. With these weapons, you can travel into the shadow and come out of it at any time. You do not need shadow essence to do it. Even someone with light essence can use it, but they will have a much harder time with it than others. He waited for a moment, assuming people would love to talk during this time. Waiting for the people to calm down, he continued. This will be sold at 2 p.m. tomorrow in my shop, Hiran's Love. Come over if you wish to buy this, Ning said, putting the scythe back, ready to leave. Before he got out, however, he turned around to the girl and brought something out. A thin blade made up of light appeared in his hand and he tossed it toward the girl. The girl quickly caught it midair and was surprised at the weight of the item. The weight of an item before bonding depended on the element they were made from. Artifacts made up of earth and crystal were usually the heaviest, with water following close behind. Other elements like wind and fire weren't that heavy. Light and shadow were especially light, the barest weight of which they gained from having been converted from element to matter. The girl had held light swords before she bonded them, so she knew that the one she was holding was heavier than most she had ever seen. Even the expensive ones. Just how much light did he pour in here? She wondered. Realizing she was lost in her own thoughts, she quickly looked back at Ning to thank him, but she was too late. Ning was already gone. Ning left the arena without meeting anybody and went back to his shop. He was being taken care of by Haddon. The boy quickly recited the proper greeting he was meant to give to a customer but stopped halfway through when he realized it was Ning and Rova. Did it go well? He asked. He wanted to go see what his teacher did too, but unfortunately, he was too beat up to say anything. Ning still didn't hold back on letting him get hurt every morning. It went better than well, Rova said excitedly. Your teacher made something incredible. She quickly turned around. Boss, what exactly did you do? Can you teach me too? She asked. Ning shrugged. Sure, when I have the time, he said. He turned to Haddon. Any customers? 2, the boy answered. One left after realizing it was not you here, and the other found out you were already gone to the arena and hurried off. No sales. I see, Ning said. Good job. You go get something to eat, boss, the girl said. I will look after the shop for now. No, you go, Ning said. We're closing the shop for today. The girl looked perplexed. Closing the shop? What for? She asked. Let's just say, renovations, Ning said, giving a cheeky smile. All right, off with you too. Hadn't taken Lori and Umbra out as well. I don't want to hurt them on accident. Got it, the boy said and walked away. What are you going to do? Rova asked warily. Ning only put a finger to his lips in a hushing gesture. You'll find out soon enough. Gregory Norin, the thin man with a large forehead, bushy eyebrows, and a scar across his left cheek, was once again sent to the weapon auction in Hiran's Love, just as he had last time. Only this time, he wasn't the one buying something but was instead accompanying someone higher in status than him. A fine gentleman in his middle years, wearing a blue suit and a matching top hat, walked alongside him. Truvan Briggs, father to Bethany Briggs, who was otherwise known as Betty, had been sent by his brother-in-law to handle the matters today. He had always been curious about Ning since he met the fellow during his daughter's administration in the institute because of the essence core he had. A man with a weird core he had never felt before, whose daughter came first in the entrance exam for the Star Beast Institute, could be no normal man. He had his suspicion that this Ning he had heard about was the same Ning that sold the lightning trident. When he received the message from his daughter yesterday about what Ning's shop was called, his suspicion was confirmed. So, after talking with his brother-in-law, Brassel Norin, the mayor, he was allowed to handle the matter with the auction today. "Tell me more about your visit last time," he asked Gregory next to him. "I can't see what else I have to say, my lord," the man said. "The shop is small, they employ a young woman and a child, and the only thing interesting there was the lightning trident he sold. The rest of the weapons are, what did you call them? Generic?" he asked. "Yes, my lord," the man said. "They're nothing if not that. They're so plainly made that it was a surprise they were sold at all. Although, they were sold rather cheaply, so that could be a reason for it." Truven nodded. "What have you learned about the shop?" he asked. "It used to belong to a man named Hiran, my lord. He died some 10 years ago, and the shop was handled by his wife after his death. I don't believe she does anything else, so that should have been her only source of income. I'm surprised a weapons shop lasted in this city. I would have thought the four beasts would have gobbled them up. The woman doesn't budge, my lord. Or so they say. That was her husband's shop, so she kept it. She has no intention to sell, so it is no surprise no one else could buy it." Truven nodded. "But she still sold the shop in the end," he said. "No, my lord. I believe this Ning fellow is borrowing the shop more than anything. It still belongs to the woman in the end," Gregory said. "I'm curious if he will move on from her once he makes his own name. At the very least, he has to change shops. The one he is using currently is too small. It won't even fit 50 people in there at once." Truven chuckled a little. "The four beasts wouldn't be silent any longer if he moves on to something better than that, I'm sure," he said and continued walking. After walking for a bit, the two of them arrived at the shop with the board, "Hiran's Love," flashing brightly even in daylight. One could only wonder how much light was poured into that. "That's weird," Gregory spoke as he looked around. "Where are the people?" There were a few people around the road, but unlike last time when there was a crowd in front of the shop, there was nothing. The young man from last time remained outside, standing listlessly, watching around. People walked in and out of the shop around him, and he said nothing. He only watched around completely bored. After a few seconds, his eyes fell on Gregory and Truven. "Are you two here for the auction?" he asked. "Yes, young man," Truven said. "Has it not started yet? I see nobody here." "Everyone is inside," the young man said. "You can go in too, or you might be late." "Inside," Gregory said in surprise, before turning around to meet Truven's face in delight. "We're lucky it seems, my lord. Either we came early, or nobody bothered to come this time around at all. We can quickly get done with the auction and leave." Truven nodded. Good. The fewer people, the better," he said. "I will definitely have this twin shadow sides. I'm sure Betty would love it." "I will have to buy it too, for young Lord James," Gregory said with a dry laugh. The two of them walked into the shop, and as soon as they did, their eyes went wide in shock. Bright lights surrounded them, and a cacophony of sounds from the hundreds of people that were lined up in the shop. Greg, didn't you say it was a small shop?" Truven asked, looking at the shop that was at least 50 meters wide in all directions. "It was, my lord," Gregory said softly as what he remembered matched in no way to what he saw right now. The shop was massive and seemed almost as big as one of the four beasts. It was even bigger than a few of their shops. "And you said it couldn't even handle 50 people?" Truven asked. "I did, my lord," Gregory answered, seeing the hundreds of people that were gathered in front of him, with enough space to gather a few thousand more people inside. He gulped. "Did you lie to me?" Truven asked. "I must have, my lord," Gregory said. "I can't imagine how else you can explain this. I must have lied to myself." He looked in awe at the massive store with items scattered throughout the walls and tables gathered throughout the room. It became quickly apparent to Truven and Gregory that they weren't the only ones in shock. Every person who came in through the door showed the same shocked look on their face. Somehow, the inside of the room was dozens of times larger than what it seemed from the outside. Ning's eyes fell on Truven the moment he entered. He had seen the man before, so recognition came easily. They seemed stunned by the size of the shop as anyone else would have. Even Rova and Layla couldn't stop gawking around the shop every now and then, and they had been let in yesterday. Haddon had been the only one to rein in his surprise the fastest, but that young man had been through so much the past month. He had seen too many illogical things for one more illogical thing to keep his surprise for long enough. The line in front of him was split into 5 this time around, with all 5 lines having more and more people added to it each time. The people in that queue filled the sheet for the bid, but they didn't immediately leave. People stayed around to tour the shop, and with so many new items displayed, they hung around for longer than just an hour or two. Rova roamed through a large shop, struggling to get to people who wanted to learn more about the items they were viewing or to just simply buy them. He felt a little guilty watching her work so hard. The shop was too big for her to handle all by herself. Still, she did her best. After all, each sale here meant more earnings for her. With a 5% income on all sales, she was going to make damn sure that she sold anything and everything she could. The items on sale this time were far better than the last time, so the sales were going to be higher too. Truven appeared before Ning and held the paper in his hand. "We meet again, Lord Ning," he said. Ning looked at him with a smile. "I'm no lord," he said. "But it is good to see you again, Lord Truven." The last time he had met the man, he had shown him 2 of his cores and explained neither. It was fun. "Have you come for the shadow sides? You better bid a lot. People end up bidding quite a bit, and this artifact has a skill attached to it," Ning said. "I heard," Truven said. "I'm sorry, but I find that a little difficult to believe. Would you mind showing it to me?" "Sure," Ning said and reached behind him to the wall where the scythes lay hung. He only had to grab one and he could activate the skill in the sword. Truven felt Ning pour essence into the scythes, but the essence he felt was so much more than shadow essence. Shadow essence, while rare, was still easy to be found if searched for. But this was something else. The skill in the scythe activated, and Ning disappeared in a black puddle beneath him. He remained there for a while before appearing back outside. Sounds of gasps rang through the room from everyone who saw it happen up close. Truven showed signs of surprise too. "Will that do?" Ning asked. The man nodded. "That will do," he said. Upon the urging of people behind him, he quickly filled the bid and walked to the side, but he still talked with Ning. "I suppose it's not possible to directly sell to the nobles what you've made. Instead of doing all this, I mean," the man said. "I can," Ning said. "But I would like to use this opportunity to improve my shop's name more than anything." "But it's not your shop," Truven said. "It doesn't belong to you, right?" "Oh," Ning gave a somewhat surprised look. "You know about the arrangement?" "No, it's technically not my shop, but it will be for as long as I stay here." "What about afterward?" Truven asked. "You need to make a name for yourself." Ning couldn't help but chuckle. "Do you think I would have any problems with that?" he asked. "I came to this city less than a month ago and see what I've done. I don't need a name to make a name." Truven's stunned expression remained for a while. "I see," he said. "I wish you good luck then." "Thank you," Ning said. "I'm having a party for my daughter's acceptance to the institute in 3 days. Will you come?" the man asked. Ning thought for a bit. "If I have the time, sure. I don't see why I couldn't," he said. "But only because it's you." He added the last part for the others that were eavesdropping on their conversation. If he accepted a request without adding that, there would have been a whole new heap of invitations to reject. "Thank you," Truven said. "I will send a formal invite later." The man left after that, along with the bald man he had come in with. A few hours later, Ning put in the final deadline for the auction and stopped letting people from adding to the queues. After that, all that was left was to announce the highest bidder. After talking the 5 large boxes out through the back doors, Ning quickly asked the system who the highest bidder was and got a rather surprising answer. 20,000 fire coins? Even Ning was unable to hide his shock at the amount. "Are you sure?" Yes, there was nothing more to ask. The piece of paper where the bid was written floated out, and along with it the name of the person who had bid. They should have known the last bid was no more than 5,000, why did they bid so high? Ning thought. Well, I can't understand the thought process of a rich guy, I suppose. He announced the winner like he had last time. The highest bid was 20,000 fire coins. If you wish to come get the item right away, come. Or you can come anytime within the next 3 days and tell me your name to get it. Ning's announcement sent a shock through the crowd, as expected. As for my next artifact reveal, it will happen in a week from now, but my shop will start holding higher grade artifacts starting tomorrow, Ning shouted. Please come visit when you have the time. The hell is going on? Ning shouted in a frustrating voice once all the customers in the shop were gone. The shop had a steady stream of customers the last few days thanks to the auction. Sales had been amazing on the day of the auction, and while it had dropped to a fraction on the following days, that was still incredible when compared to beforehand. They were continuously selling over 100 different items in a day, and that was enough to start causing Ning some problems. Thankfully, he had managed to find a way to make many items in a short period of time. Simpler items, ones without techniques, were easier to make and took a shorter time. Still, he would have to find ways to get his hands on more items. The number of items sold would dwindle soon, and he wouldn't have to worry. But that was never what he was worrying about in the first place. It had been 3 days since the auction had ended and no one came to get the shadow sides at all. The person had bid 20,000 fire coins and yet not a single coin had come to Ning. "We were scammed, weren't we?" Rova asked from the side. Ning sighed. "Seems like it," he said with a sigh. Hadden turned around from where he had been sweeping through the shop now that the day had come to an end. "What will you do now, teacher?" he asked. "What I can do," Ning said. "Someone messed with me, thinking I wouldn't know. They're going to have hell to pay." He turned to look at the two. "Close the shop for now, it's time I left," he said. "Okay," Rova said. "Have fun at the party." Ning nodded and walked away. It was only late evening, so the city was still alive, the sounds of people and vehicles making a cacophony all around him. Ning walked through the city, undisturbed. A paper lay in the pockets of his silk suits, the invitation to the Briggs family party. His feet made him want to go elsewhere, but he had to go to the party first. He could go to that other place afterward. The Truven family's estate was a large walled mansion in the inner city, with a beautiful garden at the front with a water fountain that ran all day and night. Carriages of all sorts gathered in front of the palace, dropping nobles and figures high in the government. Every single one of them looked like they belonged there. Ning wondered if the simple but elegant suit he had asked the system to create for him was good enough now. He slipped through the front gate after showing the invitation and was shown his way to the party. The party took place inside the massive hall of the mansion, with warm yellow lights shining all around the party. People stood in groups with a glass of wine or champagne, talking to others in hushed conversations. Ning walked through the party, recognizing a few people. "Ah, Sir Ning." One man quickly split off from a conversation he was having in a group and spoke. His words brought on eyes from the group that fell onto Ning. A few of them looked at him with curious eyes, but the others recognized him. They too came and started greeting him. These people had introduced themselves before, and even if Ning wanted to not remember, he did. He greeted them back with proper titles and the people were more than happy to be remembered. "You accepted Lord Truven's invite?" one of the men asked. "I hadn't realized you had started accepting invites." "I don't usually, Lord Evan," Ning said. "But I had happened to meet Lord Truven while I was admitting my daughter to the institute. Since she is most certainly a friend to young Lady Bethany, I saw no reason to reject this invite." The people around him gave him curious looks. "Your daughter is in the institute too?" one of them asked. "My Gray barely passed the test too this year. I saw no reason to put on a party for such a result," the man named Evan said. "Young Lady Bethany apparently ranked in the top 10 for the entrance, so this is very much suitable for her though. My daughter should be trying next year. She will want a rare beast as a gift for her next birthday," another woman said with a sigh. "How was your daughter's result, Sir Ning? Did she do well?" the men asked him. Sir Ning's daughter came first in the entrance exam." Tiarvin Briggs walked from the side, ignoring the fleeting glances people threw him and Ning. "As they say, you will always find water around water essence." "Incredible," one of the men said to Ning. "Are you sure you're not some sort of lord?" another one asked. "It would be hard for a commoner to get this much knowledge," another said. "You must tell us where you are from, Sir Ning." Ning gave a rueful smile. "I'm afraid my story isn't as good as you were hoping. I just happened to find a few books in an abandoned house in the middle of a forest during my journey through the eastern mountains of the Springwind continent. That's it." "Whoa," one man exclaimed. "Tell us more," another said. Someone handed Ning a drink and started requesting him to say more. No matter how Ning looked at it, they were trying to get him to reveal how he made the artifacts as good as he did. He couldn't escape them for nearly 15 minutes, during which time he made up stories one after another about his journey in the Springwind Empire, before saying how he came to the Blue Flame continent. Once he was done there, another group came and wanted to talk to him, and then more and more. He went through many people until he came face to face with another group of people that he had never seen before. It quickly became clear who exactly they were. "You guys, this is Ning. You all know who he is, right?" Truven introduced Ning to the group of people he had finally brought him to. There were 5 men and 3 women in the group, and as soon as they heard his name, looks of contempt and disgust flashed through their eyes. They were not very good at hiding their emotions, it seemed. "Ning, these are... I know who they are," Ning said, looking at them all and raising his glass of wine. "It's good to finally meet someone in the same line of work as me." These were some of the people who together owned the 4 great artifact shops of Ulharis City. The discontentment was very apparent on the face now. "You have made a bit of a name by selling some interesting items, I hear, Sir Ning," a woman with gray streaks in her otherwise smooth black hair that fell around her shoulders. She wore a blue dress and 2 teardrop-shaped red earrings on her ears, as if to show who she was. Ning nodded at the woman's question. "Not at all. I still have much to go," he said. "Do you really make your own weapons?" one of the men with blonde hair asked. "You don't have someone working in the shed while you took the fame for it, right?" "Oh no," Ning said. "Of course not. I would consider myself horrible if I took someone else's work and used it to increase my own fame." That certainly caused a bit of a stir-up, but no one could call him out for trying to defame them, so no one said anything. "What's the next weapon you're going to be making? You said you'll release it in, what, 3 more days?" Another man with long black hair hanging near shoulder length asked. "I haven't thought about it yet," Ning said. "I'm sure I'll come up with something on the last day." Ning could see everyone looking at him as if he was being arrogant or showing off. "Those 2 items you sold were incredible," another woman with light brown hair in a bun said. "Do you have more of those items, or can you make one every few days?" "I can make whatever I want, whenever I want," Ning said. "I have over a dozen different similar artifacts already." "So many?" another man said with a doubtful look. "Why haven't you sold them already?" "Because they are too good," Ning said in a shrug. "If I sold them, it would lower the value of the other items I will later make won't be as high." "Huh? You say you already have many? I don't believe you," another man said. "If you have some of those weapons with you right now, can you show us some?" the woman with the red earrings asked. Ning shrugged. "Sure." Truven remained standing to the side with a surprised look on his face. He hadn't expected to see Ning bring out more artifacts in his mansion when he first thought to bring him to this group. Should he perhaps not have done that? As he thought, something flashed in front of him, and a slightly blue staff appeared in front of him, dropping a cold mist from it. "An ice staff?" the man with the long black hair asked. "It's not very good. I don't know why you mentioned it being better than your previous 2 works." "It's not just ice," Ning said before tossing the staff to the man. The man grabbed it midair and frowned, checking the object closely. As he did, another man gasped in surprise. "This is ice and crystal mixed together. How is this possible? How can 2 different essences be used to form a single item?" Ning said nothing. Speaking would only reveal something so simple that if people gave it a thought for more than 2 seconds, they would have realized it. Merging 2 essences to form a third was a simple matter. Fire and air made an explosion. Fire and earth made magma. Fire and water made steam. Earth and water made mud. Earth and air made sand. Their simple elements had combinations, and yet nobody else thought of making combinations out of the rest of the essences. Ning brought out an armor made up of slightly brown crystal. "Earth and crystal," someone said in shock and reached out to grab it, but Ning simply put it on the ground. "You'll hurt your back trying to carry that," he said before bringing out a whip. "Is that air and shadow?" the final woman of the group, one that had the face of a man, asked. "Your senses are quite acute, I must say," Ning said. He handed over that weapon. Everyone looked at the whip with wide eyes. With the different artifacts in front of them, something that should have been impossible previously has become possible now. They looked at it from all directions, trying to learn what they could, but without using it, it was a bit difficult. They also couldn't use them while Truven himself stood there. It would be disrespectful. A few of them wanted to buy those weapons right away, but Ning told them to wait until it was sold through his shop. Do you have more stuff like these? Let us see, one man said with little patience. I do, but there's no point. It's just similar to these ones, Ning said. So these are the best you have? The woman with red earrings asked. These are the best I made, Ning said. The best I have is something someone else made. Curiosity took over the lot and every set of eyes turned toward him. In fact, the whole room had gone silent at some point and were staring in their direction. Well, what is it? Show us, the woman demanded. Ning thought for a bit and shrugged before bringing out the final item that he had to show. Ning brought out a sword and held it in front of the lot, letting them see its yellowish-brown color and the chaffed look of a land that hadn't seen water for a long time. He had brought out the Continental Sword. The presence of the Continental Sword brought some look of surprise amongst the people, but not enough for them to show any more emotion than they had for the other weapons. You didn't make this? The woman with the red earring asked. No, I did not, Ning said, but this is the greatest artifact I own. What is this? Looks like an earth sword, one of the men questioned. It is an earth sword, Ning said. It is also a fire sword, a water sword, a wind sword, a crystal sword. Light, shadow, ice, magma, whatever you can think of. This sword can create. Bullshit. One of the men cried out. Such a thing is impossible. Ning shrugged. If you think so, he said, not saying anything more and simply holding the sword. They started to second-guess their assessment at that point. Was there something special about the sword that they weren't aware of? Were his words true at all? Ning put back the sword. You might not know it, but some of the royal families would. Or should, I should say. This sword was created many years ago, and it was shown to everyone considered powerful at the time. Tell anyone you know to find out about it and you'll know how good this is. It's called the Continental Sword. They showed not much reaction again. Once again, that was to be expected. Ning started taking back his weapons and as he did, he remembered something. He turned toward a blond man with short hair on a square head and with a clean-shaven beard. His mustache had some dark color to it, but it was still blonde. All right, I forgot another weapon, Ning said, bringing out what he wanted to show. The group looked at his hand and were immediately confused. Ning was holding onto the pair of shadow scythes and they weren't sure what they were to do with the weapon. Did you make a copy? One of the women in blue dress asked. No, this is the original, Ning said. I thought you sold this, another man asked. Why are you showing us this? We've already seen this. I know, and it has indeed been sold, Ning said. Sir Bass here bought it after all. His man came to my shop and paid for it, but told me to bring it to you here. Thank you for your kind generosity, Sir Bass. 20,000 fire coins is no small price for this artifact. The blond man looked stunned. I didn't buy it, he said. Did you not send the man named Jamie to bid for you on my auction? Ning asked. I don't remember doing so, the man said. Then why did the person who dropped off the money at my shop earlier today tell me to meet you here? I don't think anyone can just bring out such a sum of money, Ning said. Or, maybe does Sir Bass have a secret benefactor? Such a handsome man like you would have no shortage of people wanting to impress you. The others in the group grimaced. Bass's face was one that even a mother would find hard to like. He had known that since childhood and for that reason alone had worked hard in his life to reach where he had, including using underhanded means. Hearing Ning call him handsome brought forth anger that he found hard to control, but he did. Anyway, here is your weapon. Whether you bought it or not doesn't matter. I was paid and was told to bring this to you, so here you are, Ning said, handing over the weapons fully. The man took it absent-mindedly. His brain wasn't working well for some reason today. Had it been all the shock and surprise, or was it the anger? He had sent Brian to the shop and he had told Bass that he had bid 20,000 fire coins and thus won the auction. Their plan was never to buy the item but rather to cause trouble for Ning. How could he have known that someone would have paid Ning for it? 20,000 fire coins, what sort of an idiot would pay such a price? This man, Bass asked. Do you remember what he looked like? Ning nodded. He was a short man, about this tall, and had a sun-darked face. His hair was short, and he had some dark bags under his eyes. The face was not that. Oh right, there was a scar along her jawline. Right here, he said, gesturing along his chin. Base did well to hide his shock, but not good enough. Anyway, thank the person for purchasing my weapon at such a steep price. I'll see you all later, Ning said and walked away. Base remained there for a while, lost in thought, not hearing the words that the people around him spoke. Excuse me, he said and turned around to walk away, leaving the premises of the Briggs estate quickly. He returned to his home on his carriage, which was just a couple of minutes' travel away, and quickly went to find Brian. The man wasn't home. Bass shouted at his servants to find the man, and 10 minutes later, Brian was in the hall, smelling of tavern whiskey, and nearly half drunk. "Did you go to that damned shop to get the item?" he asked. "What? I received no such order, Lord Bass," the man said. "No, did you go back to that damn bastard Ning's shop where you put the bid for the auction?" he asked. "No," the man replied, exasperated. "Should I have? Then how did he perfectly describe what you looked like?" I don't know, Lord Bass. I've been with my people for most of my day," the man said. Bass frowned. That was right. Why was he letting his anger take over? Whatever, he should forget about. Bass dismissed the man, forgetting about tonight. He had gotten a free artifact for some reason, so there was nothing to be worried about. Unfortunately, tomorrow morning he was woken up by a shout that they had been robbed. 20,000 fire coins had mysteriously vanished from the safe overnight, and no one knew where it went. "Sir Ning, I wish to speak with you alone for some time," Truven said once it started getting late. "Would you be free right now? Or should I prepare for some other time?" "Is it going to be a long talk?" Ning asked. "I can spare 10 minutes, number 15. "Oh, then we'll have plenty of time, but I wish to hold the meeting privately if you won't mind," the man said. Ning looked around the party hall and saw a significantly low number of people there. "We can talk," he said. Truven nodded and took him to a private room. When Ning arrived inside the room, he stopped and looked at the people that were there. He saw 3 people other than Truven. One was a short woman wearing a high-collar blue dress. Another was a taller woman wearing a red dress that hugged around her curves, making her look quite alluring. Finally, the last one was a slightly overweight man wearing a black suit with a top hat on his face. His round head held a thick bushy mustache, making him look quite easily recognizable. Ning did recognize him at just a glance, despite only having seen him in the party hall a few times. "Mayor Brassel. It's a pleasure to meet you here," Ning said, walking in. "Ladies." He gave a small bow in greeting, which the women returned. "Sir Ning," the mayor stood up. "I've heard a lot about you. Please sit." The man gestured to a seat in front of him. Ning sat and Truven went to sit by the blue-dressed woman. She was the lady of the Briggs family, mother to Betty. Seeing as how the other woman sat beside the mayor, Ning could guess that she was his wife too, but he wouldn't presume as such unless he was forced to. "I've heard a lot about you," the mayor said, starting the conversation. "Hopefully only the good bits," Ning said with a laugh. The mayor chuckled a little. "Honestly, not all I've heard is good, but I can tell most of what I heard is rumor." "Oh," Ning was a little surprised. "May I ask what sort of rumors they are?" "They say you are holding the woman's daughter hostage to let you sell your weapons," the mayor said. "Not a very good rumor." Ning frowned. That was obviously spread with ill intent. "Don't worry," the mayor said. "I've sifted through all the rumors and thrown out everything that isn't true. I only wish to figure out if these 3 are true or not." "Go ahead," Ning said. "I heard you are not someone from this empire and that you are a spy from a foreign nation," the mayor asked. "It is true I'm not from here, but calling me a spy would be idiotic," Ning said. "If I was a spy, why would I sell such incredible weapons? To destabilize the economy?" The mayor questioned before shaking his head. "Never mind. So you claim no connection of any sort to the royalties of other nations?" "None," Ning said. "Although, one emperor did try to steal from me and ended up dead in the end, not by me but by someone I was with. Does that count?" The mayor frowned. "An emperor? Who?" he asked. He couldn't remember hearing about any dead emperors. "The emperor of the Blackhawk Dominion," Ning said, "from the Glacian continent." "What?" The mayor stood up in surprise. "You are from the Glacian continent?" "Yes," Ning said. "But I left it over a decade ago. I went to the Springwind continent to enjoy my time with my daughter before coming here." "Dear God," the mayor said in surprise. The second rumor was that you weren't even from this continent. I guess that is true then. Ning nodded. What's the last one? That you're not paying any tariffs for the weapons you buy or even just the ingredients required for it, the mayor said. They say you smuggle it in, but we saw no way that was possible. We would have caught you by now. I buy nothing from the outside, that's why you don't see any tariffs or taxes. Everything I make here, Ning said. What about the things you need for the... Before the words could completely come out of the mayor's mouth, Ning poured the contents of his storage, immediately creating an avalanche of glowing light and intense essence. All four of the men and women backed off in surprise, the men even pulling out weapons to be ready to fight. Peace, Ning said. I am sorry for the suddenness. I'm not trying to attack you. The people were still on edge but slightly calmer. And now that their sudden fear had vanished, they could see what Ning had brought out. Essence crystals. Many upon many of them. The woman in the blue dress gasped. So many magma crystals, she said. There's lightning, Truven pointed at one, and then another one, and then another one. I can't even recognize what that one is. The mayor pointed to a dark crystal on the side. That's a crystal essence crystal, the lady in red said. So many of them too. Each and every crystal they saw was a rare one that could make a person instantly rich were they to sell it. Why do you have so many? The mayor asked. Let's just say I came across them during my journey, Ning said, saying nothing. He then took back all the essence crystals and made the room lack the pressure that had appeared suddenly. So, does that answer your last question? Ning asked. I don't buy any, because I don't need any. I own everything I could need for a long time. The mayor nodded without giving much thought. So, what were we going to talk about here? Ning asked the mayor. Ahem. The mayor coughed, trying to let go of the shock and fear to bring confidence into his voice again. So, this is what we wanted to talk about, he said. We wish to commission some very specific weapons from you. Would that be possible? Explosion surrounded Randall as the mysterious essence came in contact with his space essence. The explosions were sudden and with them, they took out all the essence that he used. Randall didn't know what was happening. It was as if he had thrown a firecracker into the fire and it was turning against him somehow. The essence he used was being torn apart, and the result was thrashing him all around. He tried to teleport even more, but using essence only made the situation more of a disaster. For the first time in this fight, he could see himself dying. He bore the pain as much as he could and tried to understand what was happening. His essence was being torn apart, so, would it be better if he just didn't use any essence? Randall decided to take the chance and immediately pulled back all essence that he was using. The pain flared as his body took the hits harder, but after a moment they stopped coming. He opened his eyes, somewhat blurry, but he felt happy. He was correct. This was exactly what he had to do. So long as he didn't use any essence, he would be. A bolt of lightning struck him directly in the chest, throwing him back. Randall gasped in pain while his body felt numb at the same. The clothes on his chest charred and let out smoke upon the strike. Randall struggled to his feet and tried to escape out of instinct but stopped himself just moments after the explosions sounded again. The massive flow of essence that Ning was sending out toward him was still coming. What is this? How are you using this essence? He demanded. This was what had saved his life all those years ago, so it would be rather ironic if he were to die to this. This is chaos essence, Ning said. Have you not heard of it? Chaos? Randall's eyes went wide. He had indeed heard of chaos essence, but they were only in texts and techniques. There was never someone who actually managed to use this essence, so he never knew what it was like. Now he knew. No, I have to leave. I have to get away from here, he thought. He had no choice. Without hesitation, he employed his escape technique. Space twisted around him, taking him away from the place he was at. Ning's eyes widened slightly at the sight that unfolded in front of him. Randall teleported from where he was, but the reason for the teleportation was not essence. Rather, something else had aided Randall in the teleportation. Interesting, Ning thought. System, follow. Randall arrived in a large, empty room with no windows and a bolted-down room. This was an underground room created in his house that was hidden from everyone. The purpose of this room was simple. He used it to run away from his enemies whenever he needed to. It was the safest place in the entire house, constantly warded with essence arrays that worked toward hiding aura and protecting the person inside. He took a deep breath and looked to his hands. They bled and burned from the attack. It still pained in his chest where the lightning strike had struck him. This fight had been one of the worst he had ever been in. Monster. Randall said softly. He's a monster. That was the only word he could use to describe the man he had just fought. It's not nice to call someone you just met a monster. The warning from the system came a step too late. By the time the system warned him that someone else had teleported next to him, Randall was already turning around and facing the person behind him. Ning stood with his hands clasped behind his back, a solemn look on his face as if he was thinking about something. How? Randall shouted immediately, trying to put on a fighting air, but he used no chi. He didn't want to face the explosions again. Still, he continued asking. How did you get here? How did you follow me? Ning looked around the room, almost thinking to himself. This is a safe spot of yours? A safe point to say, he asked. What? What are you talking about? Randall asked. How did you teleport? Ning asked the man. What? Randall asked, confused. You have a system, don't you? Ning asked. Randall's look of shock was all Ning needed to know the truth. He did have a system. Ning felt rather proud about figuring that out without needing his own system's help. How do you know? He asked. How do you know about my system? You teleported without using space essence, so it had to be something you used. It could have been some random thing, but something told me you did have a system, Ning said. I have a system too. Randall paused. You have a what? He asked. A system, Ning said. One that is much better than yours. But of course, just because we have something in common doesn't mean I'll let you go just like that. You will have to pay for all the damages you did to my beast. Randall didn't know what to say. I will pay. He couldn't continue fighting anymore. He needed a break. I will pay, so please don't do anything, he said. Good, Ning said, crossing his arm in front of him. How will you pay? Did you get some coins stashed here? Is this place even your house? I have coins, but not much, Randall said. What I will pay you instead is in artifacts. Artifacts? Ning looked at him. I can make artifacts myself. No, thank you. Yours probably aren't even that good. My artifacts are sought after all over this continent, the young man said. Many even make it to the other continents. Ning got curious now. You make those artifacts? He asked. Yes, Randall answered. Ning nodded his head slowly, considering. All right, he said. Show me.